inspired memes comparing him to Dobby the house elf from Harry Potter. Well, the question is, who is this guy and what does it mean Germany can go in that world? Let's rewind a little bit to the beginnings. Friedrich was born in 1955 in a small town of Westphalia. He trained originally as a lawyer and started his political career in the European Parliament in
This message is a paid partnership with Apple Card. Here's one reason I think Apple Card is good for your wallet. It's designed...
She is trading right now. With Doto, it's that simple. Open a trade using smart insights and enjoy your day. Your trade will auto-close when it hits its target. Get a 50% deposit bonus and trade with Doto.
Raadi, خلوصه broer.
This episode of What Now is brought to you by Starbucks. The summer berry refresher is making its comeback at Starbucks. You know those golden summer afternoons? The ones where the whole group pulls through and everyone shows up? Lately, I find myself holding on to those moments a little tighter. And in those moments, nothing pairs better like a Starbucks summer berry refresher. It's a bright blend of berry notes, shaken with ice, and poured over popping raspberry pearls. Light, vibrant, and just as refreshing as the moment itself. A drink crafted to help you savor every drop of the season. Your summer berry refresher is ready at Starbucks. Available now for a limited time.
I think he's gonna run for office.
I told him that the first time I met him. You won't remember this, but I said, so what, you're gonna go home and run for office?
Yeah.
And you went, what?
No.
Zelensky used to be a comedian.
Yes, and look at his life now.
Only okay, maybe not a good example.
This is What Now with Trevor Noah. Well, alright, you ready to play Something If I Rule the World?
I'm ready.
Alright, let's do it. This is one of my favorite games to play with people. And there are a few people in the world who are more my favorites than Tracy McMillan and Carter. I'll tell you why. So what I love about playing the game If I Rule the World is oftentimes we think about the world in a gradual way. And I think sometimes as people we get bogged down in what we perceive possibility to be. Right? And so I love playing the game for myself and for other people because I think it's good to remind ourselves that everything is possible if you don't think that it's impossible, and you cannot even get to it if you think it's not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's impossible to fly. But someone goes like, but maybe it isn't, and then one day you're flying, right? Yeah. So we don't know. And not everything is possible, but everything's impossible if you don't try to get there. So, If I Rule the World is a very simple game that we play. Everyone gets a chance to say what they would do if they ruled the world. And when I mean rule the world, don't get bogged down. Don't worry about bureaucracy. Don't worry about like people coming after you, not coming after you. Don't worry about voting. Everyone develops amnesia. No, they develop amnesia. Okay. So they won't go, but it used to be like this. No, it is not like that. Okay. Alright? Your goal is to get the other two people on this podcast
to vote for you.
I didn't know it was a competition part. That's
not a competition.
What it is. There's voting involved.
It's not a competition.
Okay.
It's not a competition.
You have to vote.
It's not a competition.
Just to see the merits of the idea.
Yes.
Trevor's idea gradually.
Okay.
So don't feel like
they've never won.
Yes.
No, not really. No, they've never won. I don't think they've ever won.
No?
I don't mind.
I think Josh, I have an idea when Josh.
Yeah, you won. Yeah.
Ben made us do the day off.
Yeah, Ben, we went with, but I think Josh hasn't won either.
I was surprised by that.
It's not about
Josh
winning. Josh has crazy life.
And something that was like, once he was like,
love Josh.
everyone do streams. They were like, Josh, have you done streams? No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Josh has some crazy ones where you're like, wait, Josh, what? Like, one of Josh's last ones was, he thinks that in your like sentencing or in how you get punished in society, pettiness should be exempt.
Yeah. No, petty is power.
No,
petty
it was like pettiness should be exempt essentially. So he said, like, for instance, if you committed a crime or did something to someone, but it was because of pettiness, you shouldn't be punished.
Yeah, okay, a pettiness pass.
It's like,
Trevor told us not to be polite. He was like, let's get rid of customer service. He was like, politeness.
I don't think I would have said that.
It was something around
No, I think mine was, I said like, your aptitude should not be measured by your affable nature.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. I was like, people should not go, you are a good president because you can speak well or because you're no.
Oh no,
People should not say you're a good waiter or waitress because you are good, you're nice to the people. Customer service, just do the thing. Don't even ask me how my day is what I was saying.
And I was like, how was your day?
British people.
Because I don't get that anymore.
Yeah, this is what she came here with her traumatized.
Yeah, and they're all and they're like, Americans are so nice.
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
She was willing to trade incompetence for being nice. So that's how the game works. We'll go in it, we discuss it, as much, and people will challenge you and you tell us why you think it's good. Remember, you state your case, you tell us why you think this will work, we ask a few questions, and then we vote. As I said, it's not about winning, even though Christiana has won. It's just about, us.
Mention my competitive nature.
MacArthur, genius trial.
We've never played this game with a genius.
Sociologist. We deemed it.
Okay, alright. So how do we want to start? Who wants to start?
Well,
do you want to go second?
Yes, first.
Okay. Whoa, good. Tracy first.
Oh no, I'll go first.
You go first. Alright.
Alright, so if I ruled the world in my crypto-fascist state, I would put a restriction on the amount a person is allowed to contribute to the public discourse in text. So you have a limited amount of words.
Shots fired.
Per month, you can contribute to the, and it doesn't matter.
Every time I think I know how crazy Christianity is, this woman's a
I thought this through, guys.
Keep going.
We need to put, so there's freedom of speech in the real world, but when it comes to freedom of text, there is restriction. There is not freedom of text.
This curve out freedom of text, that's
This is interesting. So
Remember that the white man said the pen is mightier than the sword.
Okay, fine. And that guy was stabbed by the sword afterwards. Okay, I have a question, but I mean...
Okay, how are you going to... Because arguably everything now is text, right?
What is the best we will
do?
YouTube.
Is there any ranking or sorting for like what one...
Zal nooit die serie vatten. Ons de internet nou, wat X is het een apps toe wat, dan kan je kijken. Ja, zo is hij die serie vatten. Oké, ik is hier sportsmensen, maar zo ik is nou zo maar over rugby. Is dan kijken, ja. Ik doe hem afkomt. Maar hij moet pas gaan om een dagse game te gaan kijken. Ja. Ik kijk maar die serie nou. Maar ik moest nog niet. Sommer voor mijn team misschien, maar zoek maar zo'n mens groot wordt, zie je. Ja. Ons het wel birthday geschenken, een Christmas geschenken, ons het vaststokken gekregen. Ja, bollen, ja, nee, ik laat. Zo, dat is maar... Hoe is dat buiten bij die bloemen nou eigenlijk? Ja, maar hoe ik werk er onderop op. Wow. Zo'n onderzijde roos heel veel klaar maken. Wow, oké.
So that's the limit. And then what happens if you go above that?
Yeah,
A fine.
Well, okay, that can become a tax.
No, it's a fine weighted to your income. Because let me tell you the story I heard about Jonathan at Versace. She was smoking under a no smoking sign, and they said, Miss Versace, you can't smoke that. And she said, just tell me what the fine is.
That's right.
Oh, the fine has to be weighted to your
That's right, because then economics is trying to get us. Some people find it tax.
Yeah, so people say, I don't believe in the carceral space. I'm not going to throw you in prison. So what I'm going to say is,
it's complicated because of that abolition thing.
Right. Well, now I'm kind of keeping you pretty rough.
Okay, so you get fined and it's a portion of your net worth.
It's weighted.
Yeah, it's weighted to how much you... Okay, alright, okay. Another question I have is, oh man.
It doesn't compel you to contribute to the public discourse.
No, I understand.
Is it, and it's cumulative, like life force, like I start out.
No, every month, say in your month, you get like 800 words.
Okay, so it is ways like your lifespan.
So it doesn't accumulate over time.
No, it
I can't
resets.
say
Wait,
it all
it resets?
It resets at the beginning of every month.
So there's no books.
No, I'm talking about the public discourse. I'm talking about online. In terms of
Okay, you're saying only online.
online. I'm talking about because I'm going to be the thinking behind it.
Yes.
We are big political events of the last 10 years have been heavily shaped and manipulated by online behavior.
I agree.
For good or for bad, it's been online.
I agree.
And some people have had an outsized influence on it, whereas some other people haven't. And it's been these fringes. So I just think,
The podcast bros are gonna come for you.
well, they'll just be in the mic more. They'll speak more.
But do you see the perverse incentives there? So now the men will go from writing a whole bunch of words and throwing that meaning to speaking
I
them.
mean, they already have the mic, so.
Well, that's what we should be going after, the mics.
Yeah, I'm gonna. This is a no for me because I don't think you're solving the issue you're trying to solve. So.
Wat is die eerste plek waar die mense sê wat 'n chapter
America is around the world.
lekker rubberkaste en mag.
We really saw this around Black Lives Matter, right? Most people.
In die binnekant van die mense arm ook al.
Most of the memes
Ja.
and the tweets.
Daai was van by die vuur.
So.
Ek het byna 2 keer oor gedoen by Randy. Die tweede keer het hy chat nog steeds nie gevat nie.
Hillary and the Russian. No.
Maar die ander kant se ene dreiging.
They found the lever that they could pull. In the same way North Korea has focused on hacking crypto. Like North Korea, most people don't even know this. North Korea has gone on like a very concerted mission to hack crypto wallets around the world. And they've gone, oh, this money is untraceable, but it's usable everywhere and it's very powerful. And when you steal it, no one can come after you.
Draai net net
So North
die
Korea
dan laat my dinge sien lang
crypto
af hier.
everywhere in the world.
So
And no one can do anything about it because you can't like raise
Een dom persoon
and
Ja, dat is fout.
context stop, okay? The same thing happened in and around social media. There were all these farms that were produced in and around Russia, and even like parts of Ukraine, if my memory serves me correctly, right? And like basically what they did was they just came after Americans, and they did it as simply as this. Every issue, they created a meme or a post, a binary, both ways, and they just shot them out. They just shot them out. Here's why the police are coming after you. Here's why they're trying to kill the police. Here's why black people are the worst thing. Here's why black people are the best thing. That's all they did. They diagnosed the issue correctly, by the way, but then they really inflamed the tension. So the issue I worry about on your side is, you may stop people who maybe post a lot or write a lot online, but then they will create a world of people who gets to like sort of outspeak them, because how are you shutting them down? Like they'll even like, I can even just think of a simple one. Elon could just buy people to say this thing.
Which is what he's effectively done. That's what I was gonna say. This is like a Twitterization of everything. So we saw with Twitter, to your point, because that's what Elon knew or figured out saw happen with Twitter. He realized that there was a real moment, this moment is a real moment of fear, governments across the country when the Arab Spring happened. That yes, somehow social media has shifted the balance of power towards a democratization of voices who could influence people's beliefs. And immediately there was a technological solution to that. We said, no problem, we will just make 50 trillion bots, right? Train on our behavior because text is easily manipulated, make it sound like a person. This is what you
Well, I think it's a good point, but I believe I could create, not myself, but hire someone to create the technology to eliminate bots.
No, but there's no bots. I'm saying they would buy people. So what I'm saying is you could easily then say, okay, as Trevor, I finished my 800 word count, but I want to like wait the election. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay, hey, have you used your 800 count? Thank you, I'll take that. And actually, here, just post this.
That's right.
In fact, have you seen some of the more interesting music campaigns that are being run now? So music used to be a very different game in that like, the way you would get an artist to blow up was really defined by the labels for the most part. They told the radio station, play this person.
Right.
We'll give you the resources, play this person. And that's how you become a star. Things started changing with streaming, with social media, with all of that, because now labels couldn't dictate it the same way. But they have found something that's been really effective now, and that is, and I think Drake did this for his latest album, it's pretty brilliant. They've gone out to everyone online. Not just like quote-unquote influencers. They got join this platform. I forget the name of the platform. And essentially it sells the services of just the people online. And what happens is I can come on there and say, as Trevor, I have a campaign that I want to launch. I have $10,000.
Maar die bra is
And I
goed
pay
ook.
for this service.
Ja.
The service then goes out to everyone who signed up to it, who's just a regular person online, and says to them, hey, find a way to play the song, find a way to make this campaign go viral, and we pay you per view. So you don't pay people who fail. It's not like putting up a billboard on the highway and hoping people respond. No. You now go, oh wow, that was an amazing dance Christiana did. She got 2 million views on that. We now pay her for the 2 million views. And then Tracy did next time, it didn't catch on, so we don't really pay her for that. And so you are paying for performance, but what it does though, it creates an idea of what trends are.
Moet je nog die bal ook nog testen? Klaar, wat is het? Klaar. Gusta. Hij doet het weer bij die telefoon. Maar 2 euro wat? Zo. Achter iemand zijn rug. Achter op zijn rug.
Was exactly that. Make this go viral, make this candidate seem inevitable, almost get it better, and at scale. He seems inevitable.
Op een man of op een vrouw? Man.
Because he uses audience, influencer. See, there's one little piece that kind of like a week ago about sort of like his influencer of politics, and how Trump is like bypassing the going straight to this. And his influence.
Just wake up, I know. Yeah. Ik ben er echt maar. Ik kan niet voelen waar je is. Je bent hier daaronder te doen. Recht.
Just in the same way, like in a lot of countries, there is a cap on how much you can donate. You can spend, or you can actually spend on this campaign.
Yes.
Right. And then it's just like there's big money in politics.
Okay. And just remind me one more time. The reason you're doing this is because
I think people talk too much online and stuff. I think that some people contribute to I think it's like get you out there.
I'm ready to vote, especially ready to vote. You're voting?
How is the voting contested?
No,
okay. This is back to my active diagnosis.
Yeah.
Right? I agree wholeheartedly with trying to look at the thing you're saying is you want to take the attention economy out of the discourse because it's ruined it. I'm there 100%. I think you got to go straight to jail because I think if you got any middle ground, people are going to game it. So based on that, I'm not going to vote no.
Okay. Yeah.
Self-interest. I'm one of those people with a lot of words. As soon as you said words, when you said words, I was like, wow. You said words. So the, okay. No, but okay. Yes, but okay. Let me explain why I'm voting no. Just so the reason I'm voting no is because I'm sat across from somebody who I consider one of the greatest luminaries in this space. I don't think that it's fair that us idiots can say more than people like that.
Oh, that's right.
No, I mean this honestly. So I think sometimes the numbers shouldn't always be right, because numbers are dangerous, like mobs are numbers, but mobs are not necessarily right.
The experts, like refugees, are actually receding from the public discourse. I have lots of friends who are authors, like,
no, please don't get me wrong.
Right, the idiots are the ones who are the loudest voices right
I'm with you completely, and that's why I say,
and you may bring the questions back to the public discourse.
completely with you. I always say this to you with love and understanding. I vote no, not because I disagree with what you've identified, but because I don't believe that this is the right way for us to solve it, and so my vote is also going to be a no.
Except that these are actually different.
The next plan is kind of hard.
Yeah, I'm going to refine it. I didn't
passing the microphone, and I'm going to put that back on the table for you.
You know what? I different. I kind of like the podcast. I don't like their content, but they just give us insight into the male psyche that I would otherwise never have.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
it's like, oh, this is how men really think. Because men don't really talk in that way. I avoid it. So I don't know.
Okay, all right. Let me be the man who then talks.
Okay.
I'll give you an insight into my world. We're going to continue this conversation right after this short break. All right. Okay, if I rule the world, I would abolish quarterly earnings that companies report on, and I would probably extend it even further than like companies wouldn't be able to report on their earnings for like maybe like a few years actually. Like no reporting at all from any company. They wouldn't be, they'd just be like, we just run.
Dus hij zei, je weer het zeer gekregen.
Ja, nee.
Ja, zeg het nog, ja, maar gekregen, dat heb je ook kwijt, joh. Ja, ik heb nog gecheckt, joh. Hij man, hij is suffer, joh.
Je zit nou nog een op de andere kant,
Rera.
op de anti.
Waar man druk moet je man. Terwijl hij nog sterk binnen, zo zet hij maar.
Ja.
Maar hij te klomp zelfs, joh.
And the destruction of most things society has come in here. I think the shittification of everything, as I call it, I greatly attribute to quarterly earnings because the quarterly earning has made it so that every CEO of every major company has to make sure that the reporting that they do 4 times a year shows that the company is making more money and is more profitable. 4 times a year you have to do this. And because you have to do this, and because it affects share price and your job as a CEO, your incentive is now to make sure that every quarter your company makes more money than it made in the previous quarter, or the money is going up, versus looking at the long-term prospects of the company, the employees, and the thing that you're actually trying to do in the world. And so when I look at every service, I am yet to find the company that became a better version of itself once it went public.
Oh, strong truth.
Right? I genuinely have yet to see.
Why don't we ban IPO?
So I thought about this. I thought about like why not ban publicly listing and all that stuff. So I do think on the little, because I went to ask some of the people who work in the industry and they said there was a major advancement that we should never take for granted that came from allowing people to collectively come in to build something even though they weren't there. Right? So I can see the value in that, and I can understand it, and I was like, you know what I mean? Because I wanted to be like, ban all, ideals and that, some people would say that's ban it all. I can see why. I wouldn't be against banning it, but I think there would be a certain system effect that I can't predict right now. So what I would say is I would just ban the reporting of how much money people have made.
People are going to steal so much money.
I would say, I have to do everything in my power to say anything.
Nobody does that Nigerian.
I didn't say anything.
You couldn't think of that Nigerian.
I didn't say anything.
Right now.
I didn't say anything. I didn't want to say anything.
Gebruik.
Ja, net zo aan.
Swap.
I can see why I could get too much out of
Your first thought, Christian, was that I'm not going to say anything.
I think on an accounting level, you look at like Enron,
Yes. Okay.
the lack of public accountability that's transparent may take us to a place that is quite dangerous, right? And now, as much as I am a socialist, I have quite a bit of money in the market.
They call it champagne socialism.
Listen, I got 3 kids, they got these 529 accounts, they're raising the money. I want to know whether I should be holding or I should be letting things go.
Okay.
And I think, unfortunately, because of the way this country is set up, the West now, before your house used to be the thing, because you have a house and you know we're okay. So they have forced us to put our money in the market. And most of us would like to know what's happening to it every quarter. I don't think that's a ridiculous
I think the downside of you knowing is worse so here's what I understand what you're saying, and I still say, remember, there's still ramifications in my world. So if people are corrupt and all that, we will still catch them. They'll just be caught later. They'll still have to report.
Yeah,
But then your money is gone. Your money is gone.
Your money is gonna be
I
gone
understand that.
regardless.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm saying, I understand the guardrails you're trying to put in place. But I'm saying, if we look at, I believe most companies are not running corruptly. Most CEOs are not stealing the money. Most. I was going to, you know me, I believe in general good.
Yeah.
So I think the risk that we're willing to take for a few, because we will
Record die van die beginner.
when they are found. You get what I'm saying? So
It's live.
the company will no longer
Oei, live.
That
YouTube.
will work in another company.
Oh, this is not
Yeah.
that's good.
Like there's a major
Bars from the
no, it's finished. You are gone. If you are busting in any enrolling type thing, you will
Right,
never
boy.
do anything businessy, any again. Facebook Marketplace don't even join it. It's gone forever. You are out of everything. That's like my remedy for it. Like you can go work.
Mensen komen niet zo.
Like you can be a cobbler.
Is dat hè?
Soms is aan boord ik but sometimes ook niet.
Maar het is goed dat er mensen zijn bij
I think my real concern is similar to myself, that you have identified a problem, which is the need for relentless profit and CEOs juicing up the company to serve shareholders rather than making good stuff. Because I don't think some companies need to go forever. So it's to be refined. However, I don't think whether you do quarterly earnings or annual earnings, that will really change.
But I'm saying you can see it on the graph though. If you go back and look at this, like once it really became a thing, because what was it? And once quarterly earnings, you see the jump.
So I think the issue here is the way that quarterly earnings have changed our understanding of the world, even if you aren't in the market.
Yes.
Right?
That's what I'm saying.
Problem. I think it's just like something you said to me once, by the way, which I love now using, which is it gives you this like casino economy.
That's exactly what I mean.
You're constantly in a cycle of risk and loss.
That's what I mean.
You're chasing both the dopamine and the possibility.
And it's making people think things
look
will
and make it bad.
better or when it's bad. It's not. It's too.
It's not a time
It's
clock.
like judging a roller coaster on every different slope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm on swap.com all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think part of your tension is that also happened at the same time the quarterly earning, the change in our understanding of the world happened at the same time that all of a sudden we were all forced into the market. But the problem is our houses shouldn't be as bad. We shouldn't have to do our retirement accounts. We shouldn't even have these 529. The babies should just go to school. So it's really hard to like now get ourselves out of the mindset of, well, without that quarterly information, how will I survive?
Companies don't have pensions. Companies don't have pensions anymore.
So what would need to happen in Trevor's scenario is basically a form of government that needs to have, you gotta have a social safety net.
Oh no, no.
Yeah. Because how you gonna push people out of the first thing that say most Americans now is, no, I need to know what's happening with my 401k.
Yes.
And that's the problem. Yo, they love the 401k. The 401k is actually where I might say is the problem with this nigga, more so than the quarterly earnings. Because that made all of us pay.
Yeah.
Once we have to do a 401k, it's not here, and we're not paid. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. I do have to, I mean, I could obviously talk about this so long. There is lots of stuff in order issues that I would need to work out. Is a half vote a thing? No. You can't half vote for Hillary or Trump. I tried. Still gotta try this step. Okay. Ooh. I just don't think there's the downsides are significant enough. I actually think, because this is one of the things where
Je gaat er geen groter in
so that means it's not like it's some weird alternate universe. We know we can live quite fine with yearly earnings. So because of that, I'm going to vote yes.
I'm going to vote no, and not because I don't think it's a good idea. My personal level of anxiety, there isn't enough Zoloft in the world that can make me be like,
you got to take your ass away.
I think something happened there. Yeah. I just think, and I think for a lot of regular people who unfortunately,
So this is how, okay, I have some of the information here. So quarterly earnings report became a standardized requirement in the United States in 1970 when the SEC introduced Form 10Q as part of its filing system. The mandate formalized the practice, and I think it was because of a crash at some point. Because before, prior to 1970, provided some porting updates voluntarily, but they were inconsistent, and then it really became like a big deal.
So really also like standardization, like it's something
And regulation.
Yeah, it was something good.
But to your point, it was because of the crash, and people were like, okay, we don't want this to happen again. But then to my point, there was another crash.
Yeah,
I'm just going to put it out.
There's something to the idea, but I just think it would give just regular people a lot of anxiety.
No, but why that is actually would be based on the fact that they knew there was another way before. Don't forget amnesia, that's how we
Yeah,
Christianity.
I forgot about that
Don't
part.
forget that part. The people don't know that there was a portion. They don't know.
Other way.
I'm saying I'm taking it away completely.
Now, you got me on the off.
See, I'm
just saying.
We need half vote. Actually, I may change mine today.
No, because people like me.
Okay.
Wow.
We come back to human nature.
Wow.
This has actually been at the heart of a lot of our comments. Like, do you just think this is a human nature problem? Okay.
Wow. Okay. Well, another note for me, which I'm used to.
Anybody else?
I did actually. I got a very
And also, my nose didn't come from a paper where it usually comes from.
That's
It
true.
came from a place that's just like,
Yeah. This one was different because normally you go like, I hate that idea. But here you went, you blame yourself.
I'm going to take myself.
Okay. Okay, I'll take it. Don't go anywhere because we got more. What now after this?
Colgate Herbal combines nature's herbs with Colgate science for healthy gums and strong teeth. Today, I'm fixing my future because someone has to.
For major signs. It's not your first time living on the earth. You tell us well if you were. Take test.
This episode of What Now is brought to you by Starbucks. As the days get warmer, there's one thing that helps make each moment last. Something ice cold and bursting with flavor. This summer, one of those things is the iced horchata oat milk shaken espresso from Starbucks. It's inspired by Mexican horchata. They shake it with espresso to make something perfectly balanced and creamy with lots of tasty cinnamon and vanilla flavor. I travel a lot, and one of my favorite things is discovering new food and new drinks in new places. I'm not sure if you've had horchata before, but you will never forget your first one. And now, Starbucks is bringing it right to you. Great for days spent on the Starbucks patio, savoring every moment of summer. Your iced horchata oat milk shaken espresso is ready at Starbucks. Available now for a limited time.
Anything else to ask people how you are and what you are behind?
Yeah, they tell you what they always have fun. Yeah, I find that's the biggest change is when I'm in New York or when I'm in the Philippines, I ask somebody, and I notice it most yearly when I come back from South Africa. If I ask somebody, how are you or how are you doing, they'll often tell me what they're doing. People say, oh, I'm really busy. And that's even how the people will ask me questions. So what are you up to? What are you up to these days?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? It's all about that. And as I say, when I go back to South Africa, it's all, how are you?
In fact, if I go home and I start to talk too much about what I do, people don't like it. It's like you're not there to talk about yourself, and that's so much. And put yourself in the center. You're there to participate in a collective experience, in what we are creating together, the afternoon, the lunch, the walk. And you really, there's a clear distinction between talking about work and talking about life. And life is not work.
Welcome to What Now? In today's episode, I'm going to be having a conversation with one of my favorite people in the world, Esther Perel. Now, you probably know Esther as a psychotherapist, as a best-selling author whose work has changed the way millions of people think about relationships, sex, romance, and intimacy all over the world. But for today's episode, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to chat to the person behind the name. I wanted to hopefully give you an insight into why she is one of my favorite people. And so today, talk less about Esther's work and more about Esther's life and how she got to the place that she got to. And I really love this conversation because it really shows you how the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves aren't always true, and how the path that we choose to get us where we can get to isn't often how we end up where we end up in life. I know you'll enjoy it. Esther is one of the most profound people I know, so you'll definitely learn something from it. Oh, and by the way, if you want to learn more about Esther's work or what she's doing right now, one of my favorite ways to engage in it is her podcast called Where Should We Begin? It's a fascinating look into couples therapy and what couples are going through in real time. So you're in the therapy session with them. That's Where Should We Begin? Check it out. This is What Now with Trevor Noah. Why did you call it that?
Because it's often the first sentence that I ask when I meet a couple. Where should we begin? Where do I find you today? What's on your mind? Maybe it's what you wrote to me, maybe it's completely different. But where should we begin? Because every relationship is a story. Relationships are stories. We are both storytellers in some way.
Yeah.
But, we're sitting here in the studio. The first years until the pandemic, we recorded every session in my office. So people came in, like any patient would have come in, except that they come for the podcast, so they are not patients and never will be. They sit in the waiting room. They walk into my office. And it's the same office in which I see people throughout the day in my practice.
Right.
And then
So you're in the same,
I'm in the same
mental space
yes,
as well.
same chair, same mental space, same room. And it really, I think, is what gave the podcast a tremendous voice of authenticity, because it was blended in with the other sessions that I do.
Right.
Most of the time, people are completely surprised to be sitting there because, one person at midnight decided to fill in the form and was convinced that they would never hear from us.
Yeah.
And here they are. And then there is the person that came again. And sometimes they have never heard of it. Because, with podcast, one person listens and the other one doesn't know what they're listening.
Right.
It's not like there's a book in the house and you can, you're reading that book. You can listen to a podcast for years and your partner has no idea.
That is the first infidelity.
Exactly. You're having a relationship under my eyes,
Yeah.
and I don't know anything about it. So it's different, but we have created an office here too, in the studio. And once it starts, I run the session. There is just no word outside.
That's amazing.
8 years we're doing it.
I'm ready. 8 years. 8 years of podcast, 20 years of mating and captivity. And how many years in the field and practice?
40, almost.
40 years. Wow. What do you think you get from hearing couples therapy that they're not part of?
I mean, it's like entering the antechamber. It's like going the backstage. It's the story that you hear about other people's relationships that you never know. You really are like a fly on the wall. So, who really knows the truth about couples? And these days especially, your friends can come and tell you they're breaking up and you never saw it coming. And on top of it, people are posturing and parading themselves all over socially in this perfect situation. So the real truth about couples is a secret often. And when you listen to it, you feel less alone. You feel like your issues are not your own only, because there are other people who have similar things.
Yeah.
You listen intently and intensely to them, and you actually see yourself. Even if it's not the same situation and the same story, there's always something where you say, I can relate to that.
The thing I've noticed is, just, from my side, whenever couples would go out together, I always find they come back, and I know I've experienced this, you come back just a little more diffused. You come back just a little calmer, you come back, there's something weird about knowing other people have problems that makes your problems, and not in a shallow way, but I mean like sitting with another person.
Normally some dream maakt me nog alleen
I'm sure you know, but like I've always loved how one person will take the other person's point of view, another person will, all of a sudden you'll find crossings where, you know, this husband agrees with that wife, and that wife agrees with that husband, and in a strange way, people go home feeling like their relationship as bad or isn't going to as much because of other people.
That's one of the ways. Sometimes they go home with the opposite experience. But yes, there is a sense of it normalizes. There is a sense of being in a kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
That one partner sees themselves reflected in another or validated by another, or that you get to hear your partner differently because someone else is saying it for them, and it's just, you get taken out of the cellar, and the light shines, and air comes in, and it's very, very moving and powerful.
I feel like these days, and maybe it's because of social media, I feel like these days people are sort of trying to win at relationships. The same way people are trying to like win at therapy, and you know?
Maximize.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend the other night, and I was saying, do you remember, it was actually Simon, and Simon and I were literally walking through the streets, and I said to Simon, do you remember a time when people used to move for love? I'm sure some people still do it, but it's less prevalent now, it's less an idea, it's even almost shunned on, you know, when people go, oh, I moved here for a boy, oh, I moved here for a girl, people go like, oh, you should never do that, you can't just move your...
That's my story.
What do you mean that's your story?
I am here because of my husband.
That's how you got to New York?
That's how I came, well, I came to America to study for 1 year.
Yeah.
I then thought I would stay a second year and kind of get more training. And then I basically never used my return ticket.
Wow.
So I know that story.
What was it about him that made you stay? Like what was, because staying in another, it's one thing to visit another country, it's another thing to stay in another country. Because where were you living then? Was that France or Belgium?
No, I actually came from Jerusalem.
Wow.
I came from Jerusalem.
Let's go. Where did you live?
I lived in Belgium, in Antwerp, where I grew up. It's not where I was born, it's where I grew up. I lived in Jerusalem, I lived in Boston, and I lived in New York. It's not that
Hij trekt mijn score, man.
Oké.
Nog
ook klaarmaken kan waar je kan lenen.
Ja, nee, dat is niet zo.
Like Paris. I went to Paris my whole life, every month sometimes. It's part of my life, but I didn't have an address there. So in that sense, I have more than Amsterdam would be a similar place. Because once you're in Belgium, it's an hour to Amsterdam, an hour and 15 to Paris, 3 hours at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, these places, I like the way that Thais Selassie talks about it. She says, don't ask me where I'm from, ask me where I'm local.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I think it's exactly that. I'm local in a few places.
You're a little softer than the Paris I know, but maybe that's just how I see you. Like I find Persians to be very blasé about most things, or they appear blasé, but you have a little more, like your eyes open a little more when you notice things and when you see things.
But I am very much not French. I have a French accent, I know that. I am educated in Flemish, I mean, what we call Afrikaans. You know, my entire 12 years of school was in Flemish. I'm from Antwerp.
Je krijgt accent, ja, maar je kan...
5 languages at home. I mean, French is a
Gewoon Afrikaans.
big part of mine, of me, but it's not the only one.
I don't know why I always thought it was more you. I think it's because of how you talk about love and seeing love through like a French lens sometimes, you know?
Even zulke iron.
Maar hij doet ook, bro, hij accenten. Yes, man. Er zijn iemand van de UK waar die mee praat.
I mean, we have this in Zulu, you know, it's South African language.
Je kan vast vragen op school, nee.
Ja.
Nou, dat is wat die hele ding is.
Hello.
Don't you have a
Dat is om jou te confuse,
Yeah, someone.
om te kunnen zien of je gaat verstaan als een verschillende manieren moet je goed vragen.
And I think French is like that for now. Now.
Want één woord is,
Like what's the word
als er komt manier om te vragen.
Was it Pisson?
Yeah.
Pisson, which is like the.
It doesn't exist in English.
Like a word.
I don't think, I've never seen
I was thinking it as friction, but I don't think it's.
No,
It's not, right?
it's not.
Je zegt, je kan willen, of is je nog klaar?
It's,
Is het klaar?
It's a shiver, but it's a shiver with anticipation and with excitement, that kind of a current that runs through your body. Now I can start.
No, I mean, you've got it. You've got it. This is what I mean by Frisson. You see, this is the French thing. It's like, it was that. It was the other one. It was Frisson. It was, there's another one. I loved it, and I remember speaking to you about this. It was in and around. It was in and around. And it was a specific word or phrase in French that sort of implied it was an understanding that somebody could tease you, but could never get into your words or your wants.
I mean, to flirt.
Yeah.
Comes from the word flirter,
Okay.
which is the tip of the tail, that is actually meant to tease you. That is flirting, is teasing,
Yeah.
playing with possibility. It has no connection to scoring.
No connection, no scoring.
In the United States.
Yes. Most people would
Because
just
this is a pragmatic society trying to engage with.
But let's score now.
Yeah. There are a lot of people who say, how could you? Then why did you? Then why did you? Why did you? No, I think that's the first part people say. Why did you leave me on? And then Esther turns around and says, I don't really leave you on. I'm playing with the tip of my soul.
Yes, it's true that a lot of my thinking about
Crusaders.
Dertien, 12, en toen verder
was very much shaped
One
by
point
the
difference.
French context.
Yeah.
My adolescence was very much
Voor wie roes je Crusaders?
but it's Latin as well. It's
Ik
not-
schreef niet voor een ander land.
It's not
Ik ken mijn land. Ik schreef niet voor Jamaica, ik schreef voor McKinsey.
things were direct to get to the point you want to
Die schreven iemand, die schreven een land.
Ik schreef voor een speler. Because
Nee,
ik voel dat
nee,
zijn
nee.
breakthrough hier, zie je.
Ja.
Zo ik support hem.
And that is not
Ik heb hier erg genoeg, je laat het spannend. Ik zal eerder zeggen,
lots of love and the communication around it and the way you express yourself and all that. It's
Heel.
really
ik heb
deeper.
hier erg iemand die... Ik ga niet van
And I
die
think I
mensen,
write from that
stel het
place.
voor.
Ja.
I write things to
What do you love about America then? You
Een box schreef voor een oor van New Zealand.
35.
35 years lived here. You engage in it in a very honest way and not in an America bashing way. I've never found. But I've always been intrigued by the paradox of why would you live here when it is that direct and that immediate and it's all about the goal and it's all about the objective. Like what about it made you fall in love other than meeting somebody?
I mean, I definitely fell in love with New York, and before I came to stay here, I had been here already. The first time I came to the United States was in 1976,
Okay.
bicentennial. It was kind of the first time that we began to travel to the US. I came with a cargo airline. I hitchhiked around the corner.
So what does that mean, a cargo airline?
It was one of these airlines that
No,
all
yes,
cargo.
come on.
Yeah.
You came with like a DHL plane.
Yes.
That's not even a thing. That's not
But
a
it gets
thing.
better. I spent almost 7 weeks hitchhiking across the country.
Jo.
I saw America like when we'll never see it again. I stayed with all kinds of people from every walk of life, every race, every religion, every profession, every class, and every culture. And really, I think that was such a powerful experience. I was 18, not even. And at the time we could hitchhike.
Yeah, those were the good old days.
I was totally received by the kindness of strangers. And really, I went to parts of the country that I never even thought I would go because it wasn't in my, I was originally going to join a Greyhound on the bus. But people were so kind that I ended up doing the entire trip hitchhiking. I go from New York to the West Coast. I do the whole loop of the West.
And this is all for fun?
Yeah, I finished high school. This was before going to college, and I came with my boyfriend, and we decided to travel. But I didn't know it was going to be a
Whoa, wait, okay, let's rewind. You didn't tell me about the boyfriend. So, no. So you were hitchhikers were picking up you and the boyfriend?
Yes, I stood in the front desk.
Yo, you pulled the move.
And so like his English was much better than mine, but I can't tell you what the diversity of people that we met and how much this has influenced me to certain kind of open-mindedness, where, tolerance, curiosity, just curiosity before you make your judgments, to people who had never heard about Belgium. It's not like they knew where we were coming from.
Yeah.
To AM radio stations where the only, the amount of time they talked about the weather was just unbelievable. And with affect, with feeling. And the only time they talked with feeling about things was about the weather. And I did hours of these car rides, staying with people in their homes.
How do you get in someone's house?
People would say, where are you staying?
And you would say?
And I would say, I don't know, we look for a hotel, for a motel, and then they would say, if you want, please we have a room, you can stay. It's a very interesting way of establishing trust, connection, a rapport. I'm as strange to them as they're strange to me.
Yeah.
Really, it was all positive, except one time where we figured out it was better to just get out of there. But the rest of the time...
No, you can't just how do you figure out something?
Because you can... It's very, very intuitive. It's like, it doesn't sound, it doesn't feel right, it's around the corner, but around the corner takes 15, 20 minutes. Like, you just know that something doesn't feel right, and you just say, thank you so much, we get off here. It's not my first hitchhiking trip either, and I've done others, but, you asked me how I came and why I stayed, and I think that experience was very influential in how I absorbed the US.
Yeah.
And I think, things are often both ends, right? On the one hand, you come as a European, you have a whole respect for culture that is established a long time ago. You value history, you value tradition, you value rituals. But you also value to come to a place where people rarely ask you necessarily that when I came, and what have you done, and who is your family, and what's your idea, what you want to do here. And then you either have people who look at your CV and you don't fit, and they say no. Or you see people who say, this girl, she has some ideas and she has some energy and ambition, and we let her try something. This is not what you get in New York. New York, we tried this and it didn't work, and that may take a long time, and there's a lot of red tape, and because tradition and history are so valued, change and innovation and novelty is not necessarily instantly welcome. Here, it's the reverse. So when you come here as a 20-something-year-old and you have ideas and energy and you want to do things, it's incredible. I came to New York and I got a tremendous amount of money to make a documentary and to do a project on the relationship between blacks and Jews.
On the relationship between black people and Jewish
people? Yes, psychodynamics of black-Jewish tensions.
Can I tell you?
We're talking 80.
This is the year I was born. And this is a fascination I've had for a very long time.
Yeah, that's you and me.
In my life. Yeah, literally. No, can I tell you?
Attention, but it is...
Yeah, but actually I'd love to know about that word, because I've grown up in this world where obviously I have a lot of Jewish people in my life. I went to a school that was technically a Jewish school, definitely in a Jewish neighborhood. Grew up, and South Africa was weird in that once apartheid ended, there wasn't an immediate mixing of people, but there was definitely a blurring of the lines. And so the younger generation grew up in a world where we were all exposed to each other's worlds and cultures, and
Yes.
So in my school, the Jewish kids acted like they were Lebanese, but the Lebanese kids said things that were Jewish, and these kids were eating that food, and they were singing that song and dancing so it was this mix. But I was always intrigued come with, you know. And then I remember reading, I think it was Malcolm X's biography, and he speaks at length about like the Jewish community and like this Jewish man who helped him and what he was doing, and he was obviously becoming Muslim, but it was still, it was an interesting, it's always been a fascinating look for me, and I'd love to know what did you learn from the work, or what were you trying to take from the work?
So I had trained in psychology, and I was very interested in cultural transition.
Yeah.
And particularly in couples and families who are in cultural transition. And that included people who move, who immigrate, either voluntarily or forced migration, internationals, but also in the middle, mixed couples, mixed families, interracial, interreligious, intercultural families.
Interracial, interreligious, and intercultural. Okay.
That really was the bulk of my work.
First 20 years.
Yes. Before I touched making in captivity. Before I began to talk about culture and sexuality.
Yeah.
And I wanted to understand the differences between forced migration and voluntary migration. I wanted to understand mixed couples are in cultural transition, but they do it in their own living room. And they don't have to move across the border, but it's a happy. And so I write here, and I did a research project on that, and on multiculturalism in many different parts of the world. And then I had done a lot of work on minority-majority relations. I came from groups, then to families, to couples. So majority-minority relations, and I thought the Black-Jewish relations, it's minority-minority relations. Now, I am 25. I have been here 3 months. I don't think this would ever happen today, that somebody would let this person out of nowhere, with not from here. But there was something about my naivete that I think kind of worked in my favor, where I just was curious, because I didn't identify necessarily with American Jews, and I totally ended up Black. And so I did this 2-year project on minority-minority relations, and what is the psychodynamic of two groups who have experienced in their own way massive amounts of discrimination and humiliation, and what are the dynamics, and then I did a documentary about that, and a film, and that would never have happened in Belgium. I mean, that doesn't happen. You don't.
Why? What doesn't happen?
That somebody out of nowhere comes and says, I have an idea, and that somebody says, here, I fund you, go ahead and show me what you can do. And the same thing is happening with me today, that people find me and just talk to me directly. And then this week I get an email, I'm a college student, I'm about to study couples therapy, I would love for you to tell me what I should study, what I should focus on, who I should be. And I'm like, how did you find my email? Because I totally know how to find my email. But it's like, the idea that you could do this, rather than calling the thing and can I talk to the professor? It's not just hierarchical in the way that we have internalized systems. But it's all relative. It's not like it doesn't exist. I just want to make sure that this is not taken in absolutely. But that was my experience of why I really liked it here. And then I felt everybody in New York came to do something. I mean, you come to New York to do things, be it in art, you don't come to New York to live, I mean, yes, you can live the New York life, but you come because you have energy to do something. There's refugees of every sort in this place. So you start to meet the most amazing people. I have a lot of other things to tell you, I'm not always so positive. People who know me well are going to be very amazed to hear me.
Yeah, but that's why I wanted to tell you, because I've heard you speak at length about all these things, but I've never ever asked you, and I've never heard you talk about, what it is that gripped you about. This is beautiful. Even in my short
life, go home,
yeah,
and I would see some of my dearest friends, and I'm curious if you have that too. When you go home to South Africa, you see the people that you've known your whole life. But basically, at 25, they were living not that different from how they would live at 45, and at 45 they were already living like, and I thought they already know what the future is going to be like if they're healthy and all those words. This is the kind of, they're on a linear trajectory. In New York or in the States, you have no idea. You can start with suddenly, this kind of what happened to me.
was die live krijgen van jullie.
Ja.
And
Dan heb
I
ik nog
can't
een foutje.
imagine that
Yes.
you have to in the same way.
I think in many ways, in Europe, what I found, Africa might be different in some ways, but
The decorations by clay.
elements of it. In Europe specifically, I know it's all about what was, and I find in the US it's all about what could be. That's constantly the dance, but then I find Europe comes with a certain measure of breathe into it, because it is what it was. As long as it matches, then you can relax.
Blijf, terga. Shit, yeah.
There's a certain level of patience and calm that comes with it, because they know that it always was that. In America, there's a certain edge of, maybe I'll work on a Friday. You know, I'm gonna work weekends. You know what, no time off. I'm just gonna push a little bit more. And I think both of them come with their pros and cons. You know, the one metastasizes the other one liberates you. But I think everything needs to balance, right? Too much liberation is now just chaos, and then too much of a metastasized system is I guess it's just stuck in time. It doesn't move and it doesn't evolve. I'm always trying to play with that balance just in life. Because you go, how many times do you want to evolve, change, move, grow, move on to the next thing? And how many times do you just want to sit and say, yeah, you know what, Tuesday will be like Friday, will be like Saturday, and let's see.
This is something I teach actually, when I teach systems, I would say every system, every relationship system, be it an individual or an organic system in nature, straddles stability and change. If you change too much, too fast, all the time, you dysregulate and you go chaotic. If you don't change, you fossilize and you die. So you need both. I think in the US, you are often on the treadmill and you're moving very, very, very fast. One thing I never lost was the idea that I leave for the summer. And I leave not for 10 days. I leave for 6 weeks. And people always would say, I don't feel guilty. And I never understood why I should feel guilty. You take time off. And I maintain that notion. The space in between, the time to do nothing, except dream, imagine your life, think what else you want to do. And that form of reset was, I never stopped. And I traveled back home, just a few times a year. And that was the essence of, it's like, you go there not to do necessarily, but to be, to enjoy the company, you don't have to prove anything. You don't live to work. And that is still very much present. And I try to bring some of that back with me here. I try to have it as part of my life. And it's a privilege really to be able to straddle both. Really. I didn't think about it like that. At first, when I was young, I would go home and I would think, they all know where they belong, and I don't know where I belong.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Like they never, in my mind there were two groups of people, those who never left and those who left once. Once you've left once, you know that there are more than one place and you no longer have that sense of roots.
Yeah.
So I would look at my friends who stayed and I would think, they had such a clear sense of where they're going. Of course, it was linear, but I envied that piece of them. And then, but after a week I thought, oh no, I'm restless, now I want to go back. I want to go back to my life, and I would get all busy. And so I for a long
Ja, Stella, wanneer kom jij?
wanted to have the freedom of being in two places, but I wanted to still have the sense of rootedness and belonging that is part of belonging to one place. And over time, decades, it's not, I slowly began to actually appreciate that I was part of many places, even if I didn't necessarily belong to all these places.
Choose pro tips for longer-lasting 12-hour gym protection.
Goed zo hoor.
part of me.
Yes.
But I am not just that. If you want to know me, you need to know this and this and this. It's various parts.
Which are the different parts of you that make you who you are.
The locations, the languages, the stories that accompany me. I think probably you too.
I think so. You know, I'm trying to think of how it works for me.
I mean, what part of your Americanness struggles with you?
So I think no. So because I spent so much, because I lived my whole adult life here, I'm very good at being South African. You know, it takes me a week and then I'm instantly grooved. The one thing that I will say that I've inherited from America, which I'm always grateful for, is the idea that there's the possibility to do it, even if it does not currently exist.
Yeah.
You know?
And like the storytelling is story.
Exactly. There's just always this idea of, but what if you could do it? Or what if you could do it? It doesn't exist, but what if you could do it? And I think of how crazy that notion is. Everything that is, at some point wasn't. Now we treat it like it's normal. But there was a time when it wasn't. So I think I've probably adopted that. What else is it? There's also some negative things that I think you adopt and if I'm aware that I can leave them behind, you know. So America will make me feel like I have to be actively engaged in everything all the time. There's a certain FOMO-ness to America as a whole. It doesn't matter what it is. Business, or are you missing out? Are you not doing anything? Are you not engaged? News, have you kept up? Do you know what's happening? Has it broken? Is it breaking? Is it live? Is it happening? You know, that's what is going on. It doesn't matter what, even small things like food. Have you tried that place? You've got to try that place. Oh my God, I can't believe you haven't tried that. Why haven't you tried that place? There's a certain, you know,
drive.
Yeah, but an urgency more than just a drive. There's an urgency to be part of and to not miss out on that I don't experience when I'm back home. When I'm back in South Africa, it's different.
Because when you live in a more collectivist culture, the culture drives you. You don't have to go and attend everything and be part of everything in order to know that you exist. Because you are absorbed by a larger tradition. I think that is part of the individualism here, and part of the individualism is also, you know, once I had a family, I had a very different experience here, because you have to do everything yourself. It's not just you have to go, you have to keep up with the news, you also have to pay for your education, you also have to pay for your health, you are responsible for everything. And when you come from a social welfare system, that is a very different experience. The idea with which people take it for granted that they have to put all the infrastructure in place. A marriage here is a social welfare state of two. And versus, you know, there's a social welfare state that exists as part of the system, and within that you create a family. That puts an enormous burden on people. Enormous.
We're going to continue this conversation right after this short break. You always think you would do this? What was like the idea? I find that there are almost like 3 different stages that people sort of project themselves in. One is when you're very young. What do you think you would be when you were like a young child? What do you want to be?
Oh, I think I had different. I had 3 things. I either was going to be an interpreter, because my mom said you speak all these languages, you'd like to travel, interpreter with TV roles, or journalist, because I was curious, and a theater actress. I love the theater. But I think, honestly, for me, there's the people who've always known what they wanted to do, the people who just stumbled upon something, and then the people who had an inclination, and then they matched it with what life was in front of them. I think so much of what I did is because I arrived to the US, because of the opportunities that the US gave, because of the obstacles, because I didn't have the right license and I couldn't do what one would have done normally.
I love that.
If I had studied.
So necessity became the mother of invention.
I had to hustle. I had to create myself. I had to find a way to do, and so it became a kind of a combo between what I bring and what life is putting in front of me and says, do this now.
So the friction is the reason we have, you See, this is what I mean. No, it's amazing. My producer loves a story. He was telling me that there's a story told, I guess, that paints a picture of a little bit of a life that most people wouldn't associate you with at first glance. But I do think it explains a lot of like your style and how you see fashion and everything. Like, how did you get into, and not fashion the way people think of it, but what is your relationship with fashion?
My parents had a clothing store. They had clothing stores. I lived above one of the stores. I worked in the store pretty much since I could talk.
What type of clothing?
Everything I wear, everything you wear.
Okay, so just like a mix of...
A good clothing store. But you know, my brother opened the first boutique in Antwerp. It was the first time that young people were dressing separately from adults, right? When you were little, you had a suit with short pants.
Yes.
And
you just learn what the adults wear. A smaller version.
A smaller version, exactly. And then in the 60s, suddenly you began to wear your own, the jeans, the sweats, the Shetland sweater, you know. And so my brother opened the first boutique in Antwerp where young people went to dress separately from the older folks. And I lived my life with the change of seasons by looking at the change of windows. And I accompanied my dad to the manufacturers to pick up the merchandise and the collections, and I went with my brother to Paris all the time to get the merchandise and to look at the fashion show. Yeah. So I kind of grew up in a fashion business, in a clothing business, and there was a tremendous amount of attention to it. I also sat in the store and watched my mother sell, because the stores were open till 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night, and my mother worked in the store.
Was that common back then?
Yes. Yes, every day till 8 and Friday and Saturday till 9.
Wow.
So if I wanted to see my mom, I had to be in the store. I sat on the chair and I watched her sell, dress people, tell stories, told their whole life story. I went with my dad to bring suits to people who were dead, and families who were mourning before they were going to the burials. I mean, I really learned about life through clothes, basically. And I'm the only one in the family that didn't enter the business, the family shop.
Why? Was it because something pulled you more, or was it because something pushed you out?
We lived above, and I just thought we never get rid of it. It's with us at every meal. So we talk about when we have the family shop.
Yeah.
Anyone who's a family. And I thought, I want a profession I can carry on my back. I want a profession that I can travel with and I can, do it.
You wanted the store to live above you.
Yes. And I can do it anywhere I go. The thought of being tethered like that to this place. Because then I had an office and private practice. It wasn't, until Skype started. But that was the main idea. I remember saying to my parents, I want a profession que je peux porter sur mon dos, that I can carry on my back.
And here you are. I could be wrong, but I feel like there was the mating in captivity Esther came onto the scene and in many ways gave people their first look at an idea that went beyond the flat way they looked at which is one of these. Oh, mating in captivity? Oh, for those who might know, yes, the book, for those who don't know.
It is its 20th anniversary.
Congratulations! Wow. But I think it was one of the first pieces of work that changed people's flat perceptions on not just relationships, but infidelity, the infidelity of the mind, how people, and for a moment in time, that's sort of, how I think a lot of people thought of Esther, and that sort of was. Yeah, it really was your conquest at the time. It was the journey that you were on. Now I feel like you have this passion and this laser focus specifically around the community, the village, reconnecting with people, finding people. I actually thought about you the other day because I walked past the laundromat and I literally thought to myself, I need to talk to Esther about this. I have this theory in my head. I think we have neglected, or we have gotten away from two elements in life that have robbed us of intimacy and we didn't realize that it's a second system effect. And those are need and friction. Right? And when I looked at the laundromat, I saw both. but in different ways. The main thing I saw was friction, and I thought, it's amazing how now we live in a world where if you live in a building, you want the building to have a laundry, in-unit laundry, whatever it is, washer, dryer. And when I looked into the laundromats, I thought, imagine how many love stories wouldn't have happened if people didn't have to come and wash their clothes. Imagine how many friendships would have never been sparked if people didn't have to come and wash. And it's friction. It doesn't seem like the right ingredient to get there. But when I looked into the laundromats, I was like, oh wow, what a cool organic way to be. Because you're stuck with somebody for 3 hours, and you might find you with them every single week. At some point, you might just say hi. At some point, nice to see you again. Hey, you left I put the coins in the dryer, and I literally thought of you and I was like, wow, I wonder if this is like part of what Esther's fighting. Well, not laundromats, obviously, but friction.
Yes, the importance of friction. That is definitely a piece I talk about. But if you want to go back for a moment, so I had been a couples therapist for quite a while when I was mating in captivity. I just had not focused on sexuality and the cultural story that supports our expectations around sexuality, around desire, around eroticism in long-term relationships. And I took a kind of a side road, and I just thought, I want to explore this, because I had been trained in certain ways to think about sexuality in relationships, and I just thought, is that really true? And is that the way it works? Because that's not what I see in my office, and I don't think it's what other colleagues see in their office.
Wait, you're saying your training wasn't matching up with what you were seeing
That's right.
in the world?
That's right.
I was assuming it was your training.
No.
That informed you.
No, not at all. That's part of why the book became so significant, because it actually questioned a whole set of suppositions that were parading as truths when they were actually not.
Give me an example of...
Sexual problems are always the consequence of relationship problems. If you fix the relationship, the sex will follow. That happens sometimes, but I had seen many couples who got along much better, and it changed nothing in their bedrooms. Because the politics of the bedrooms are not the same as the one in the kitchen. Because love and desire, they relate, but they also conflict sometimes. And how do we negotiate and reconcile security and adventure, love and desire? That was the subject of this first book. And then I began to think, well, what happens when desire goes looking elsewhere? And that became the book about infidelity, and I thought, here too, there's a whole set of ways that we think about infidelity that don't help a ton of people. And I would ask an audience after audience if they've been affected by the experience of infidelity in their lives, and well, 85%, 90% of the people would raise their hands. Either because a parent was, or they were the child of, or they were one of the three protagonists, or they were the friend. So this is not just a few rotten apples on the side. And people are blotted by this, and I thought there needs to be a better way to help people deal with the crisis of affairs and the breaches of trust and the violations and all of that. And then these are still two books that basically presumes that people will be in relationships, or at least those are the people I wrote for, or people who seek to be in relationships. Then I went back to the origin of my work actually, which was, I'm a systemically trained therapist who looks at relational systems, and I began to see our relational systems and our relational lives is changing fundamentally. It is one of the most important pieces of the future I'm interested in, the future of relationships.
So go back to, you said systems training.
Yeah.
So help me understand, what is the difference between...
Psychoanalytic and systemic?
Yeah, I wouldn't know the names, yeah. So psychoanalytic and?
Systemic.
Okay.
Systemic training was it exists in cybernetics, it borrowed pieces from cybernetics and feedback loops and looked at relationships and relationship problems, or problems in families and couples, as they are connected to the context.
Right.
How is the system organized that keeps this problem in place, versus going just inside the cell, looking at your own personal story rather than looking at what is actually happening between me and you. That's a very different interpretation. Looking at how are we interacting in such a way that our communication is really fraught, or that we end up both being rejected at the end of every conversation, rather than just what happened in my history and what happened in your history. It's understanding, that's it. Problems occur in the context. You look at how is the system organized around these problems, and it is interpersonal and not just intrapersonal. And that to me was the beginning of thinking relationally. Hence community, friction, and all of that. If I look at the line, I've been looking at what happens between people and not just inside of the people. And our mental health models have been very, very focused on what happens inside.
Yeah.
And the idea is that if I am better with myself inside, it will solve all the problems between you and I. If I am more at peace with myself, I'll be nicer to you. If I like myself more, if I'm more selfish, etc. And that is sometimes the case, but it is not the whole story. And but the whole story is also the opposite. If I'm actually, engaged with you, I'm much less likely sometimes to think about myself all the time.
Yeah.
And to find meaning in doing things for others, and to find relevance, and to even get confidence because of how other people see me, rather than stand alone in front of my mirror and try to say to myself, you're worthy. So that is the big divide at this moment. That is really an essential division. And then comes technology, and then comes, climate change and migration, and all of the big geopolitical issues, and they all are influencing the way that we are relating to each other. And then instead of just calling it relationships, I began to think, no, it's relational intelligence. That's really where I am now. And that's not the same as emotional intelligence. It's really looking at the whole system. All relationships have expectations. They have boundaries. They have room for creativity. They have, a dimension of accountability and responsibility. They straddle how we negotiate. Self and the other, my needs, your needs, how much I connect to you without losing me, and how much I connect to me without losing you. Mm-hmm. All relational systems have hierarchies, have roles. It's a map. And what is happening to these systems in light of technology, in light of AI, in light of the fact that, and now we get to the friction, that most of the predictive technologies are aiming at reducing friction.
Yeah.
And they want you to have a polished, smooth, frictionless delivery of your every delight on demand. And that is fundamentally changing how you and I relate to each other.
Yeah, for me personally, I just noticed.
Is that a long story for
No, it's great.
Does that give you a...
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, I think it does. Because I think a lot of people are experiencing this, but I don't think we understand why we're experiencing it. And I also think most people are being blamed for it, either from the outside or they blame themselves. So I think a lot of people are sitting at home saying, I can't be friends, I don't know people, I don't have a community, I'm lonely, I'm depressed, I'm this, I'm. And then they are blaming themselves. But no, I think very few people are thinking about the laundromat. Very few people are thinking about what it means when your food gets delivered to your house versus when you had to walk and go and get the food. And I don't mean it in like an old man way. Am I gay? I just mean like the conversation that you have with the person at the store.
Oh yeah.
It's just like that little weak tie that builds something in your world. It's a little. I always think of it as planting the seeds for serendipity. That's how I think of it. Because you never know which one will grow and which one won't. But even in comedy, I will always say to my friends, things go wrong all the time in my life, right? You're traveling, you have to cancel a show, or a thing goes wrong at the show, or whatever it is. And my friends will say to me, how are you always so chill about it? And I go, I'm not necessarily chill, but I have practiced telling myself that all of this is inevitably going to be comedy. The friction is the comedy. There's no good comedy that comes from a beginning and an inevitable conclusion. It doesn't work. I went to the store and I looked for the size that I was looking for, and they had it, and I bought it, and my card went through, and I went home and I put it on, and it looked great.
No story.
There's no story
They
because
give
there's
me
no friction.
obstacles.
Exactly.
That's the same as the erotic formula. Attraction plus obstacles equals excitement.
Oh wait, hold on. Attraction plus obstacle
Equals
equals
excitement.
excitement. Huh.
It's the same in the rules of desire.
You know what's funny?
If there's no obstacle, if there's no friction,
It's
this
so
we
funny
come
you
back
say
to
this.
what we said.
I remember once having a conversation with a stripper who's it was the most random conversation, and I said to her, why do you put your clothes back on? And it was just a joke, right? Because like we all of us are in this club, and here we are for a bachelor party, and this person dresses and then undresses and then dresses and then undresses. And I just said as a joke, I said, why do you put your clothes back on? It would be more efficient to keep them off. And she said, yes, but you'll be surprised. I think, I won't articulate it when she said it, but she said, you'll be surprised at how the men aren't turned on by us being naked. They're turned on by the idea of us becoming naked at some point. And she was like, that's essentially what we're playing with. And now when you say it like that, I go, oh, yeah, it sounds like the same thing as the attraction. The obstacle is the clothing and whether or not it will come off or when it will come off. And that creates the excitement.
Correct. That's a good analogy.
Are you praying to God after the Christmas tree getting out of bed? Are you patient
Yes, yeah.
for the start of God in your financial life?
Die zoek je die net zo in. Hij moet de story vertellen worden.
Ja. Dat wil ik gewerkt nu af hoor.
Of financial management is the primary reason behind financial problems. And to help you with that, I created a new season of the Bible Finance Crash Course. There are 28 classes, 100% online, 100% free. In this crash course, I'm going to show you for free, no fine print, no tricks, that it's possible to have your finances under control.
Of course, who's bachelor party?
It's like, people are like, bachelor party. It's actually more common in the US. I don't think I ever got invited to a bachelor party at a strip club in South Africa.
Not what do they do?
It's more of you have what we call a bride, like a barbecue, and you hang out. But I don't think it's funny actually now that you're asking me, it isn't seen as an ending of a life. Does that make sense? So I find a lot of American bachelor parties are, well, this is the last time you get to explore sex and craziness and eroticism and all of it, so you better enjoy it. One last ride.
That's right, you're about to enter the marital cell.
There you go.
And your monastic life.
But I don't remember anyone saying that in South Africa. I don't remember anyone
Trek je leeuw aan zoals een vrouw.
That was never, I don't think it's ever even been framed like that. It's more the coming together of family. That's what people focus on. They go, oh, now you're welcoming another into your family, or the other side is becoming part of your family. I think that's, so strip club wouldn't make sense for combining families.
I want to go back to the laundromat. I love this place. I think the laundromat or other places like it, the bookstore, the coffee bar, the train station.
Die over nog een interessante conversation wat je voeren.
Ja.
Ik heb er aan de eerste wat de antiers nou met die.
Ja. En ik vind dat zou jullie verhaal vertellen.
Ja.
You know, one of the more come
Ja, dat is
outside.
ook iemand in het alles.
Dat is ja.
Statistics
Ja, dat
are
komt weer van de kant af.
an article for the antisocial century by Derek Thompson. And 74% of food that is cooked in a restaurant is not eaten on the premises.
That's the new number.
And that woke me up. An increase of 30% of people eating alone in the restaurant. Now, eating is one of the oldest worldwide gatherings, traditions of coming together with others, with friction of every sort. And the fact that we are going to order from the restaurant and then bring it home and eat it many times alone, that's a problem. So this is all I'm going to do now, from now on, is the future of relationships, getting people to not feel so lonely, so isolated, so locked up in their houses, so defeated by relationships. And so transferring their expectations for algorithmic perfection into their relationships. They want people to become perfect and predictable, like the technologies. And we are, by our very nature, unpredictable and imperfect. And that is part of the beauty of human beings. It's exactly that. If there is no obstacle, there's no story that's of any interest, like your intelligence. And I think that we're saying something that is it's more important than we even let out this friction piece.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the plot. You tell stories and they have a plot, and the plot is built by all this unpredictability.
Yeah.
Be it in the sexual plot, or be it in the comedy plot, or be it in the relationship plot. It's really important. What are we going to do otherwise? What's going to happen to us?
I think the difficulty, though, is realizing the value of it in the moment. I think that's
Ja, dat kan het. Zeg gemakkelijk zijn warm. Je wil arrangeren, hè? Lekker.
took the chance, something different, explored beyond my, you said, what was it, culture, religion, race, all these things. And in the moment, it's so easy to just like, It's so because it's the ice cream. And we never feel good after the ice cream, and we always regret the ice cream, but we always fall back into them. So that friction, like I love that you're positioning yourself there, because I think...
But friction is connected, I think, to the big issue of the moment, which is uncertainty. Because friction is what makes you have to experiment, deal with the unexpected, deal with the unpredictable, deal with the lessons of making all kinds of bad choices. It helps you deal with uncertainty. Dealing with uncertainty is what helps you deal with anxiety. That's why...
Wait, say that again. Dealing with uncertainty is what helps you deal with anxiety?
Yes.
In what way?
Because if you become more adept at dealing with the unknown, the unexpected, the unpredictable, then you develop a sense of confidence. It's what you just described when you get to a show and you have to cancel something or the flight was late. You have a stance that basically says, I know what I can control, I know to handle the unknown and the unpredictable, and I know that it will land in my comedy because it will become part of the story. Now I know it maybe, but that you don't get completely frazzled, you absorb it, you have a shock absorber. And that shock absorber is what allows you to not be as anxious about the unknown, about mortality, about the unpredictable, all of that. Having all the answers in the palm of your hand is not making us less anxious. It's making us more anxious. Because we're no longer making bad choices, discovering something, realizing we don't like it. We begin to expect immediate, perfect answers for everything. And relationships and life, our existence, doesn't operate this way in many aspects. Some of them do, but the majority of things are way more complex than that. So this piece of uncertainty, matched with all the changes that are happening at full speed, are making us very, very fraught. And that to me, because everybody wants to talk about the loneliness epidemic, but people are not necessarily addressing, but I think it's the other piece, which is how do we deal with so much uncertainty all at once? And when you can't deal with uncertainty, and you don't have the resilience to help you with anxiety, then you don't know how to deal with frustration, conflict, differences. And then you become more intolerant, and then you go to look for people who sell you certainty. And that comes with political regimes as well. You want somebody who's going to help you feel more certain. I'm going to solve this for you. So to me, that's all interconnected, and that's happening on a geopolitical level, and it's happening in relationships. And so to just look at the dilemmas of mating and captivity is not enough anymore.
Right.
I think there's something bigger happening that is touching at the core of our existence. Every research tells you that you only live longer and live better when you have meaningful relationships, and people are less and less of it.
What was the system that made you this way? Like I've always wondered, like, what was the best when
come on.
When your parents would talk about you, how were you with other kids, or how were you in the house? Was your world certain, or was it more uncertain, or?
My world was certain, but my parents' world was a world that was completely decimated. So, predictions. So, I think it's two different things. On the one hand, one of the most important aspects of my background is that I am a child of two Holocaust survivors, and my parents were the sole survivors of their entire family. So my mother was the youngest of 7, my father was the youngest of 9. Nobody survived but my parents. So they definitely dealt with uncertainty, and they dealt with the unknown, and they dealt with a world where you have no idea where kindness will come from, and where order will be restored, and where humanity will come back, and all of that. So I have all of this in my background. They each spent 4 years in concentration camps, many camps. They were slaves, basically. I think that all of that is extremely important in how I look at the world, how I look at who is good and who is not, who thinks of others, who doesn't, who can be kind, how much is our ideology defining who we are versus how much does our behavior and our actions actually define who we are. All of these big questions. But then I think in addition, whenever I see dogma or groupthink or mass psychology or crowds, I tend to think there must be something else. There must be another way. Is this really so? Or is this just so because that many people think like it? And I think it's the combination of those things. I act very fearlessly, but I am not. But I act fearlessly.
Also, I guess you got courageously then.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never saw it. But yeah, potentially.
Because that's what courage is, right? It's acting in spite of the fear.
I think of myself as counterphobic. You know that term?
No.
So we can be phobic, we can be fearful, and counterphobic is when you actually do the things that frighten you the most.
How do you find the balance between that and living life with a reckless abandon that causes danger to you and others? Because some things scare you for the right reasons, don't they?
Yes, of
like
course.
like when you're hitchhiking, you didn't go with that one person because something scared you in some way.
Yeah. I mean, you always want to keep judgment. You have a healthy dose of skepticism. You don't believe what everybody tells you.
People will say this in different ways. They're like, go to the thing that scares you. And then I've been public about this, but I was thinking to myself, I wish my mom was a little more scared of domestic abuse. Yeah. Because then I wonder what would have changed in my family. And I talked to her about this, you know? And I'm glad I spoke about it publicly, because people have even spoken about it publicly as well now with me. They go, when do you allow the fear to control you or to inform your decision? And how do you know when it's a good fear or when it's a bad fear? Like,
you don't always know. I mean, you have a sense, you look around, you ask other people for a reality check.
Yeah.
When I am very worried about things, I ask for a reality check. I also know that in my stomach lives a really long history of fear and that I can have very strong reactions, to situations. But I also know that the legacy of this precedes me, and then what do I do with it is a different thing. But I think, when do you know if your fear is valid? It's a fear. So what helps you with fears is grounding yourself in reality. How do you trust reality? Generally, it helps to have other people around you to help you. What I'm seeing, what you're seeing too, is a check.
Right.
And the check is not always done alone. You're not always the best person to actually know, or at least for yourself. You can be perfectly perceptive for others. But for yourself, you don't necessarily know, because you sense a lot of things.
Yeah, in football we say man on.
What is that?
I've always loved that. It's one of the reasons I love playing football.
Yeah. Soccer or football?
Soccer. But,
Our football.
Yeah. One of the things I love about football is I always go, for me, it's a perfect allegory for life. Because it's one, you are the individual. Everything you do individually matters to you and to the team. However, you cannot do anything without the team, and things will happen because of the team. So you're part of a system. And so it almost ties in those two ideas, where one is completely, what am I doing as a player, and why did I do that, or why am I going to do that? But the other one is, you have to do it in relation to others, and you have to understand why. So you can kick a great pass, but if your teammate doesn't reach it, there was no point in kicking it, And there's one, when you talk about your community, you just say man on or man, and it means you're being marked by something that you may not be aware of, and the people around you can observe you better in the situation than you can, because you have your blind spots. And good teammates will always tell you what's happening around you. They say man on, they say time, they say you've got time. And it just means you've got time to think. You can breathe on the ball. Turn, you can turn your body, and I love those small moments where you're reminded that you're not in it alone, even though you are alone in that little microcosm of a moment you're alone.
It's a beautiful image. It really describes it very, very well. There is what you can do, And then there is how other people can help you do what you're about to do.
Yeah.
And then how what you do will help what others need from you, because that's the way the team. It's a great image. It fits my thinking very much.
When I think of your parents, I think to myself, and this is purely anecdotal. I have some friends, well, obviously because they're young, it might be their grandparents who survived the Holocaust or escaped it. And I've often found that there will be two groups, and this is purely anecdotal, and I know I'm distilling it down, but I'll have some of my Jewish friends, like they'll go, my grandparents taught me to be afraid of everything, question everything, run away at the first because of what we experienced. Then there's other ones who go, no, they taught me to fight harder, to be in this,
correct.
And there's no like one correct one, but I think to myself, you could have had parents who wouldn't tell you to hitchhike or wouldn't let you go.
I didn't tell them.
Oh, you didn't tell them?
Please.
Okay.
No.
Oh, okay.
And certainly not that I was traveling with a boyfriend either.
Okay. No, the story. You see, now the story's making a little
But your
more.
distinction is very important, because I've often described that I grew up in a community that was all Holocaust survivors. They were not Belgian born. They all arrived. My parents also, when they arrived to Belgium after the war from the concentration camps, they were refugees, and they stayed illegal refugees for another 5 years. So this is not just the war, it's everything that follows. I happen to be born later. My brother is born in 46, I'm born in 58, so I just arrived when my parents were finally beginning to kind of settle themselves. But I often thought that in my community, and what I described, I saw in my community, but I think you can apply this to many other communities and many other circumstances surrounding trauma. There were people who did not die, and there were people who came back to life.
Oh, damn.
People who did not die lived very tethered to the ground, often fearful, often afraid to take risks, often afraid to enjoy, because when you enjoy, you cannot be vigilant. You cannot be worried and joyful at the same time. You cannot experience pleasure and fear at the same time, unless it is baked into a certain kind of pleasure system, but not the way that these people were experiencing it. And they often lived with curtains that were kind of pulled down. You entered their homes and there was a kind of a morbidity. They survived, but they were not necessarily alive. And this is a village. This is not that everybody discussed it like that. I would feel it when I would go to the homes of my friends. Then we had another group, and they came back to life. And I am very blessed to have been part of parents like that. My two parents, they had not survived for nothing. They didn't starve for years for nothing. And we discussed many times what made them want to continue to live, and how did they get up in the morning at minus 70 degrees and walk with newspaper around their feet and go work in those factories and be moved from one camp to another, all of that. And they were going to enjoy life. It wasn't just they were going to enjoy life with a vengeance. The biggest thing they could do was actually enjoy life.
Enjoy life with a vengeance.
You understand?
It's a beautiful phrase.
I think what I took, and this one was very young, I had the notion that my life will be meaningful. Well, my life will be big. Not fame or things like that, but I will do important things. I will live a rich life in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a very interesting anecdote that happened to me this year. And I would often, so that was the thing I had. I'm a miracle child. I arrived, years after my parents tried for me to be born. I had this whole legacy and all these bright people at my feet, and I'm going to live in a way that's going to kind of give them something. So that's a piece also of why what drives me.
Yeah.
But this year, I was invited by a German media group to be a guest of honor at a dinner at the Prodi Museum in Warsaw. And amongst the many other guests was also the foreign minister of Poland. And I had to say something. So I got up. I had no idea what was going to come out of my mouth. And I said, when I was a child, I used to lie in bed and I would think, one day I'll go places and they won't tell me Jews not allowed. They let me in. But not only will they let me in, but they will tell me, you are welcome. And not only will they tell me you are welcome, but one day they will tell me, you are the guest of honor. We want you here. And here I am,
Nee?
invited by the Germans at the Jewish Museum of Warsaw in the presence of the Polish foreign minister. I guess I actually manifested this dream. And then this was like, I didn't know if it was the adult in me talking or the 8-year-old in me. Wow. But the room was silent. Wow. You know, it's just like, it was right there.
Wie is die anti, jong? Die anti is het diepje.
Yes, ik zie je.
Here I am, amongst you all.
Ik zit er luisteren aan.
I'm invited, I'm accepted.
We plannen er voor het
we can start a new relationship. And we can repair.
Is
and
de
we can learn
perel.
to respect each other. And we can learn to honor each other's presence. And that's what I want to do.
Something my mom often says. It's the reason like that she goes to temple, but she'll go. She says like she feels like Jewish people and black people are natural allies because unfortunately there's a shared trauma and I forget the other word that she uses, but it's sort of like ostracization that they can all relate to. And it's interesting you just saying that, you know, unfortunately a lot of it can be applied to many black people. You know, the dream to go somewhere, to be welcomed, to be brought in, not just be allowed in, but to be welcomed in, to be seen as part of, to be, it's, you know.
That's why I tell it to you in my version, but I think these are stories that belong to many other groups and many other people who have been excluded, rejected, annihilated. I mean, nobody has the Olympics on the victimhood.
Don't go anywhere, because we got more. What now, after this? When you look at, I don't want to say the way we are today, because I know the more I travel, the more you realize that there's no myopic lens on what the world is feeling. But there's no denying, in Europe especially, in the United States, there's a lot less thinking of what could be, and really sitting back into the like, this is the way it was, this is the how. As somebody who thinks about systems, where do you think we are in that journey? Because it seems like that journey has, you know, a sort of natural curve that it follows in history.
If you look at the history of cultures and societies, it's, when you do this, I would say it's periods of expansion and periods of contraction.
Yeah.
That is what I see. And I think that we lived for a long time in a system that was more complex. I'm going to give it to you from the point of view of relationships. For a long time, people lived in tribes, communities, villages. But we still do in the majority of the world, mind you. And the relationships are organized around duty and obligation, around loyalty and community. And there's a lot of clarity. I mean, there's been polarization always. Churches fought each other, tribes fought each other. It's not like we hadn't been polarized. But it was slightly different because every one of these hierarchical structures, communities and religions, provided people with a good sense of clarity and certainty. What we didn't have is personal freedom or personal expression. We moved with the modern era and through a system of relationships where for the first time we began to switch from duty and obligation, we moved to choice and option. And basically at the center now of relationships is the individual in search of a community. Not an individual in a community in search of personal freedom and expression. And you have more freedom than you've ever had, but you're more alone than you've ever been. And you are crippled with uncertainty and with self-doubt. Because you have a tremendous amount of decisions to make when you have freedom. You can decide so many aspects of your life today that were never available talking in the Western age. And with that, the burdens of the self have never been heavier.
Tại muốn biết tay nào mà cái mắt phone man. Anh làm muối lên chú.
Bisa iPhone saya.
kan 2-3 weken weer komen.
Ja, kalau masih ada aku yang marah ya man.
Ja.
Gebruik je dat niet voor die lives?
Hoe zei je?
Gebruik je dat niet voor die lives en die fotografie?
Ja, ik zit hier zo man.
Je is ook een ding, ja, zo gewoon vind je mij. Ik zie moest man die level up. Sta je man?
Ja,
Om een kleine misschien goed dus dan.
Zeg er maar voor.
How
can you post the park?
Die club school in die moment zo.
Waar krijg je poster park?
Kijk hier, dat is hier hoe kom ik nou nog een kamboes en een werk. Sta je?
En dan denk je wel dat je zo mooi nou en nee. Dan kwam gewoon kleine dingen voor je doen.
Die bespreking was de weer was er aan.
Hier een rammetje. Ja. Hoe ga je eens toe?
Ik moest.
Gisteravond? Jo. En nou? Nou, wanneer ga je op nog weer?
Ik moet nou, ik weet niet graag op
Je moet weer, dan ga je naar Spanje weer.
hier, Spanje is er weer.
Oh.
Ja, dat was nog meteen na ik op de bus.
Oké.
Maar dan zie ik was ik wil nog wel weer zo'n man praten met Leo die bank. En dan zie je die mannen wat groot kunnen toelaten.
Ja, je mensen gaan jouw bedrijf.
Ja, luister maar aan jongens.
Ja.
Ja, je ook hoor.
Ah.
Ja, werkt niet op die melkloten.
Ja, praat maar eens zelf.
Aanbijdingskunstmis, miswater. Wat ze kan die werken?
Die kan maar strooien die het
Oh zo?
Ja.
Dat komt in hoe zo eten.
Maar wat ze kloten hebben die? Al die de belly, al wordt er iets van kijken.
Wow, ja. Als je eigenlijk hoor is van ons zien also, hij die komt.
Yes.
Maar hij is zo blim bakken wat op is. Ja, dat ga ik al doen.
Wat om strooien geworden, nergens of dat dan?
Kunstmis.
Oké, kunstmis met die volklucht op bijna.
Ja, ik snap het ook wel, ja. Ja. Dat is waar ik op dat.
Ja, maar je besluit om bij 200 om 18 jaar.
Want, Randy heeft nou al een hele paar keer geteten, maar toen denk ik maar niet dat je maar allemaal... Ja, thanks voor jou. Een beerd geven. Ja, om zeer te maken.
Als je dit van zeker maakt, gewoon...
Zeer maken.
Zeer maken?
Ja, ik zeg zeer maken.
Zo worden jullie moet nog je navolgen voor...
Ja, maar ik tooi van dit goed in, maar ik die man ook niet maar ook niet samen.
Yes.
Ja.
Je vertrouwen.
Ja, zullen ze elkaar ook niet in.
Waar zien jullie elkaar?
Maar dat is maar zitten. Hey, maar ik
wil een kerk gewoon.
Ja. Ik kan even een kerk zo broer.
Maar dat kan je niet, ja, ja, ik kan maar dat is met de sieren.
Een verkeerde man zo... Je kan hem niet bij andere plekken bouwen waar de kerk van de vanavond.
Wah, die mama is in bij Jolly Dolphin oh. 2 floors up, wah.
Ja, maar ik heb per ongeluk. Er zijn ook kleederen, maar ik per ongeluk kom aan 2 floors waar hij hele dansen.
Hey.
Als een vriend.
Voorderpaar.
Als een vriend.
Ik heb glad geprobeerd dat hij tattoo niet. Ik heb de eerste keer echt geprobeerd dat hij tattoo hij wat ook in de kerk is gered getatoeëerd. Toen vraag ik gewoon, wat is die tattoo goed erin?
Deze krijg ik door iedereen genoeg.
Ja, dat gaat leuk dat ze met ook.
Nee, het is klein.
Ja. Wat ik maar eens zie, jij waar je zelf promoten, die is zo weer.
Maar hoe is
Ja.
het weer, bro?
Ja,
Dat is maar die, hè?
Zeven maar posten. Ik denk dat zij weer daar staan, hebben ons aan de jaar. Ik denk dat stoppen we daar staan posten. Oké.
Oh, maar abolition yang kali dia. Woi, itu punya lebih keluar.
Ja.
Nee, die oma die komt aan om.
Ja, ik denk misschien dat je een beetje eruit wil. Zo. Nee, is vast fijn zo. Oké. Gooi meer kant toch?
Kijk de baken in de
Ah, is fijn, ik gooi. Oh, wat? Eerder samen en je kop ook meer rond.
Dit is wel echt aan het tegen, maar ik heb een kopje maken, maar kijk niet wat bij die ligt.
Ja, kijk maar zo.
Kalau iPhone mana?
Foster die nog met Nexus.
Wie?
Ik nog heb je Nexus.
Altijd nog niet.
Is dat zijn nog zo?
Saan solso.
Ja.
Saya. Ino ay chigal ni dat tulo.
Nee, maar die anak iba na was toen ik mezelf werken
Ko
of
dia
wat?
WhatsApp ya.
Nee, het is komali zo. Ja, ik denk ik werk ze nog wat.
Yes, is nog aan, is nog aan. Zo is nog aan.
Is hele bouw nog een jats.
No vape, no casa, no alcohol, en no drugs, no cigarettes.
Maar hasten zijn met de let's go.
Is de wifi af of wat dan?
Ah nee, wat gebeurde is, ik was met de TV zingen. Zo, mijn phone charge, nou blijf je afslaan en zo.
Maar jullie doen het nog niet meer, wat dan? Jullie kan je produceren.
Als je dat maar even niet raakt, dan moet je niet kijken.
Wie zei?
Toen zei je dat ze niet hier.
Ja, wat ze maar
Ini siguro itu bena ne.
Toen zei je dat ze.
Ah, de kenni me para bana ini. Ai tak banya. Ai tak komit ra. Simpan super 12 ba. Ai uno kaso. Ai di biar ba biar kan.
Deze heel goed.
Vai pro quarter finals, semi finals en finals ne los mam play. Ai sme inside. Ne man het zien dat we perform. Wat kan ik zien? Wat is dit? Blues? Six?
Nee, even zo blauw bro.
En die hebben zich aan je druk oorlog, branden wij nog.
Ja, drankje is dat is score.
Ja, maar ik kan
Druk
zien.
totaal aan alleen.
Was een goede performance daar zo.
Drankje is een bier bro. Doe het ergens dan.
Alas ik ook nog lang op voet willen gaan maken daar man.
Die open dag.
Ja, nee.
No,
Nee, die game je land kijk. Oké. Sama sih kan mga pumiliya, abi ko sa iyo.
ja.
Ito din sila finals. Oh, wala hindi finals dito. Try nga beer try sila. Ayun ko biya ako na.
Hoe neem je hier om bij misschien tijdens over dan te lezen waar andere mensen drank en lees je en dat zo wordt.
Wel, oor die algemeen ek is maar 'n ou wat hou van jokes en baie praat en dit is so vir my, ek is nie 'n stak-up ou nie so, ek pas nog ons vinnig in op die ouens se levels. Maar dit net is as ek sien die ouens is nou te kwaai op 'n ander level vir my, dan sal ek eerder sê okay nee, ek gooi my die kool uit.
En als het nou bij Temptations komt bij jezelf,
Nee, bro, ek wou glad nie.
totaal je hebt nog nooit gedronken in je niet of wat?
Nee, ek het gedrink.
Weet je al?
Man, de bek volg het. Ja,
Zo klinkt.
Hey.
As kom maar na.
En nog maar 3 jaar dat ek nou nie drink.
Maar raak makkelijker man.
Ja, klein, die is 2 jaar zo.
Het raakt makkelijker en raak.
Ek het myself eens te werken.
Ek het vir lank, vir jare, zoals ek al het, alles.
Die reden ook maar vragen omdat bij mensen deal met temptation op een verschillende manier.
Hoor, dit is mij echt zo rijk, ik was al een beetje mensen, ik was al bij jullie om deze goede, ik vat voor mij cabana juice voor water of voor wat ook al.
Nee, die zal nooit lust.
Zwaar, hij neemt
Wat is het?
hij is zwaar, hij klinkt ook joe.
Nee, oh, je zit ons naast, ga ik heel lekker.
Ja,
Nee, dus ik moet vragen dan.
nou, maar met tijd raak ik weer
Als je.
Ik foto maar als je zeker bier wil drinken, maar
als er een gevoelens en daar,
ik kan je eerlijk zeggen, ik weet al dat ze soms gaan voor die snel schieten en zeg ik vragen of ik meer bier krijg. En dan loopt ook bij die ijskast en dan krijg je dan zeg ik, lukt het mee.
en er is
Intriek.
Dan stap ik weer uit.
Ben je getrouwd al in onder?
Ja,
Hoe oud is je nu?
30.
30. Hoe oud ben je getrouwd?
23.
23. Dus misschien wel.
Ja.
Wat is
Go interview die man, bro.
ik is maar niet
Ja, nee, nog maar zo
ik
gaan leren,
was
dus
misschien
gewoon.
nog niet.
Hij
Ik
is
ga
maar
die
zo.
vraag want op een van die dagen hè, ons allemaal gaan leren leven en totdat je dood is, nee, leer je nog steeds iets. So, oorlog wat ik kom, net een stukje advies op een sorry, dus ik wil
Wat is dat
vragen,
die in
wat
jou?
advies heeft jij voor iemand wat nog enkel is en wat wil trouw voor getrouwd is? Wat is je advies voor?
Ole enkel guys. Ole enkel guys.
Oké, wacht. Hoe blij jij gelukkig in je huwelijk?
Ja, dat ik hier echt vrouw getrouwd.
Als ze aanpassen, man. Hij hier, hij moet er niet aan
Ja,
blijven.
je moet
Hij
compromise.
wil gaan niet aan
Compromise
aanpassen.
Compromise.
Je trouw je beste vriend.
Ja, nee, je gaat niet aan.
Vriend dat je elke dag samen gebeurt. Dus ik en mijn vrouw was chommies geweest.
Ja, nee.
Lekker.
Ja, nee.
Elke dag het gaan. Zien, soms is het.
Zo jullie was beste vrienden voor en
Oh, baie beste
Yes,
vrienden.
je moet eerst even je vriend komen
Baie
halen.
beste vrienden.
Van, ik denk dat ze elke naweek, het ons samen kermis. Zien, we drinken samen, we gaan samen voor en toe.
Nou, wat aangezien jullie dat nou zo is, hè? Nou, als we zo praten over, als we nou komen bij mensen wat hulle tyd elkaar vir die eerste maand of twee, dan trou hulle al.
Wel, dat hangt af. Het gaat over de stad. Ik en mijn vrouw was, ik denk een jaar en een half samen. Toen ze verloofd 2 jaar getrouwd. Zo, wanneer je voelt, je kan me voelen wanneer het
Ja, nee,
is.
het is mij
Ja.
zo.
Je kan me zien wanneer iemand jou, als je ziet die een richting gaan, hè, en hij voelt in je op bij richting.
Yes.
Dat is zo.
Op mijn koers zo.
Ja, kan je zien, je kan me heel tijd worden. En dat is nog een wat je kan zeggen, hoor. Leg op de kop, dit is wat ons weer. Wat de ander.
En dit is wat ons nou gisteravond ook oor gepraat het en hy ons gesê dat as jy nie 'n vrou in jou lewe het nie, hy is nie regtig.
Ja, kort maar wat je wat.
Is er echt een nieuwe zo'n klein?
Kijk.
Hij wordt hem.
Dus elke naweek, nergens.
Die uitdaag inweg met nee, zo'n klein.
Wat is die vrou van hier?
Een kleine vrouw was hij wel hier. Wel een samen.
Ik kreeg mijn vrouw een voorhand.
Ja, maar hé, drank kom klein.
Toe jy saam hier rond moet verstaan jy.
Ja, ik heb mijn vrouw zelf, maar als je de beste manier is, ik kom de vrouw in de kerk te doen.
Kijk, ik zou zeggen, hè,
Some people, sometimes other people.
wat ik van mijn vrouw gezegd toen ik haar
Als
gemeen.
we elkaar in de kerk gewoon moeten.
Toen drinken we nog auto in.
Ja, nee.
En maar ik heb gezegd dat mijn hartse begeerte is in. Van mijn oma had me altijd dingen gezegd. Kijk, en zo'n vrouw kan niet altijd drinken.
Zo Igor,
Hij moet een nuchter in is wat een nuchter besluit maakt. En mezelf, joh, ik ga niet een nuchtere persoon zijn. En mijn maat zou elkaar maken. Maar toen denk ik op mezelf, dat ik haar ongelukkig maak. En ik vond dat ik ga nadenken, Jeeves toe, en ze video gaan ik Jeeves. En zien ze, en toen denk ik, toen ik het geweten, omdat ik hier van kleins af ken, zien ze.
Ja, nee.
In counter gaat al zo'n moment toe te leven. En toen zeg ik van, één dag moet ik me hier van jongens, van mezelf. Als het ons moet beter weer gaan, was raak van mezelf. Zingen. Want ons kunnen ze ouders hebben steeds herhaald nou niet.
Nou, dat we gaan nou, even wat gaan nou.
Ons kan nie meer bly met die met my ma as ek hierso nie. Jy sal 30 en jy sal 25 al. Jy kan nog 'n high card speel, brother. Jy sal adult al.
En hoe meer, hoe langer tyd jy word, hoe langer tyd vat dit vir om te bou.
Okay, wacht, dat wat hy nog gesê het, dat is ook 'n bietjie belangrik.
Ja.
So wat jy nou eintlik wil sê is, né? Wat sal jy sê? Moet jy verkies om vroeg te trou of later te trou?
Ek sal sê trou wanneer die tyd reg is, maar
Yes.
Ja, nee,
Ek sal sê.
wat ek net sê is wat ek bedoel by hoe langer dit vat om te bou is bedoeling as ek myself op kan vat was ek voorbeeld hoeveel kere kon ek al voor gewees het dat ek gemord het bedoeling van
Losgaan weer,
maar vir die tyd wanneer jy nog iemand ontmoet en jy wil nou begin bou en dan vind jy nog al lang gesê door so jy kan al op eie gebly het ek kan al
Ja, hier staat dit al.
Hoeveel mors het dan gaan sit en dink 'n bietjie en gaan werk uit vat jou laaste 6 maande of so dan kyk wat van en wat kan jy van daai laaste 6 maande se geld wat jy gespandeer het
En die ander dag is alle vragen aan hem krijgt. Wat kan je wel kiezen tussen een bier en een GTI? Ik zeg je, hier naar de eerste vraag van een GTI man. Ik moet je zelf en hij is met morgen.
Ja.
Maar hoe vraag je me? Wat kan je weer hebben? Wat kan een GTI weer doen? Als net, wat kan een bier zo voor je weer hebben? Als man weer zo bro, zie je? So, kom maar even hoe zelf toe, waar je gaat doen, wat ik zeg.
Dat is ook wat ik zeg. Dit is wanneer je visie wanneer, dit is wanneer iemand krijgt en stel als je, kom ik zeg, ek gaan ons nou gebruik het om maar so mag. En jy het tevenganger is, né? Ja. So nodig. En jy moet iemand insteken wat ook 'n tevenganger is. As julle altyd dieselfde doelwitte is om net te sê elke naweek mekaar te moet sien. Maar dit is nie maar kom ons
ja, dan premium zo premium. Er is geen daar.
Ja, er een container toe. Dan kijk wij de reizen voor ons aan. Kijk, gaan we een soort dan ook zien.
Ja, nee,
wat zakje of twee?
Wat kan jy wys?
Dit besef toe jou vrou is.
Ja, want ek my vrou.
Maar oké. Met tensere maar maar besef maar om klik.
Die stap nie.
Hoe het dan laat dit ook kry want as nie dat na. Maar jy weet dit is slyde en slyde. Jy gaan nou hier
met die stap.
En nou hoe dit nou nie weer kan jy maar.
So okay, jy sê nou dit, né? Dat jou vrou mens gekort om regting te kry in die lewe. As ons dit so kon sê. So nou argumente onderhandel. Het jy 'n vrou mens nodig?
Ek sê jy het 'n vrou mens nodig, maar dit is as jy iemand
Hy sê japer man.
Die Here het so gemaak.
Ja,
die Here het so gemaak.
Hy sê japer.
Jy moet 'n vrou hê in jou lewe.
Het is makkelijker om af te dwalen met temptation.
Ja.
Maar als je iemand hebt wat je moet zeggen, dan is het nog beter om op de rechte pad te komen.
Komt hier op een vrouw, ja.
Het is al hier, ik heb niemand, ik heb dat, kom maar gaan voetbal hier, kom maar gaan roepen.
Ja.
Maar als je iemand zegt, en je iemand heeft waar je kan musiceren, en je zegt, hier,
ja, dat is iets heers toe.
dat kan beter achter zien. Kom maar zien dat beter op wat.
Ja, dat is zo.
So
jy het 'n vrou nodig, maar wat is ook nie meer moet in kom.
As jy nie sterk genoeg was nie.
Jy het 'n vrou nodig. Die Here het so gemaak van hom kry. Want jy het die krag om te was, jy kan voorskoop maar jy het krag.
En wie smaak elke aan of jy jouself kos maak?
Ja.
Of jou eie was elke tyd. Ons weet jy is nou haas met Josiah.
Wat hulle met die post zijn publiek man. Ek kan as ek kom kyk ja my mind word daar dis te doen man.
Apa itu pun?
Kita ini tentu pun dia selesai. Ini selesai.
Alam maaf. Alam maaf. Alam maaf saya beli.
Hah? Itu kalau kan, sekolah awal
Ya, kok malah istri saya bukan di bawah
Kau di mana?
Dia sih jadi mah.
Ni tes kau.
Lekin ni mah, sih no, pula extra berdeku handaran lagi. Dia mah kali pun jadi mah. Oh, drama na wah pangkastraan na pang may kumunufu.
Ini expire.
Saan man, kaitan. Yung mga ulit ay sound answer to the life pang kiwa. Ang answer wala awi na yun no. Dan flying
Us live and the sounds and
kay dan fly for the mesa. Isang bitin ako interview ni
busy guy di ko bas. Di si winner di ada yung nanti itu. Di ko bas di.
Ya, pagi mana ada kan mana. Ini mana sih museum mana from dulu gitu kan. Mana kayak rata nunggu gitu. Ada mana ada nunggu.
Betul, kamu tuh.
Sama sih. Dekat mana.
Terblij, maar dan gaan werk daar een beetje. Yo, als Anno ik kom, is er een beetje 12 gaan werk.
Oh, I farming, I farming. Imo na era email lidet pa ini mo grade me no.
Isa moed bro.
Imo na era email lidet ko ay BS yo. Pan mo. Boy. Asa buwan ayo ya dami okay.
Siya lebih.
Iya, kan itu yang dan sini ya. Dat muka ah.
Bago bumi no.
Kan ini baik daw pang try.
Wat ik zeg, ik werk zelf elke dag wat die bios was en goed te doen.
Ja.
En voor mij, als je wat niet van hem gebruikt, kan je het gewoon zelf doen.
Dat is
Je kan niet wel zeggen, ik wil hier niet meer. Ik kan je waarborgen dat van die ouders wat maar daar met die beste werkt, van je ver hier, als wat iemand die zo van je met de Spaanse gebouw is of zo. Ik zou iemand eerder aanrijden. En dan druk je hand en ze zegt, mijn baas, en ze druk je hand en dan wees zo om. Als wij die gaan les springen.
Dat is ja.
Perfect.
यार मैं वही तेरे बराई बराबर में लोग बड़ा पैस दार में नवा बात करने पीछे आई कोई गाजना से भी होती है
Maar ik zie hem om me ja. Zie hem om me bro.
Maar hij is gaat nog steeds met de onkomst hij is
Kalf is op kalf. Kalf is op kalf.
Ja nee, dat kan niet best maar
Oh, het is weer gewoon te passen door de trek.
Anong trek ay trek
Ja, het trek is gewoon zo opgevuld.
Ik kom weer terug op mijn deur. En die man treknya gitu ya. Alay kita try bola, dia kan. Alay dia kan.
Paya lekker om iemand zo zeer te maken. Wie voorstelt? Iemand kan je misleid vangen sih.
Itu musim dia mau taksi dia Ay, bro, la llena, bro. Ma veo una vez la que lo pongo, no, bro. Ahí va, Step. Oh, die season I don't play.
Ja, maar klaar, zomaar once.
Ya, tenang mak ya kata everything kamu buat second session. Lahat klase na po yung marwan.
Dus moet jij, maar dan als ik klaar, dan als ik gezond is, dan
Ya.
ja.
Ya, walaupun kali dia tahu ikan umko yung kali.
You see, sometimes require 2 sessions, sometimes niet, depending on the tijd en die cliënt. Ja, tijd en die cliënt in mijn rug.
That's why ya. Dan moet je maar buat second session tu.
Ja, nee.
Ja, dat is mooi op hij. Dat is wel mooi, ja.
Ano yang boleh? Sailing kan? Ya, sailing lain ni. Ang boleh lain ang boleh sailing kan?
27.
Lining na lining na.
Ja, leider is het dat.
Ja, dat is hoe we maar sailing.
Bij mensen zijn om weer die shading te zien.
Asaba na ne.
Hang op.
Ja, hang op. Ik ook hang op. Wauw.
Basta abali-bali kasama sila.
Dat is ja.
Maglagong algebra sakto po yun. Ano bibigyan na. Ayan, ayaw yun yun.
Ja, je zou het
Yung banukas lang.
Altijd
Kaya ba? Napalay.
Jo, altijd kan het bro, hij is niet.
Deze mga ganyan ang ganito po. Ang blok kong head. Kaya katino, ang mga markay ito. Ang mga markay ito. Maklum, ilapon, nangyari. Yan ito, kung hindi alam mo.
Kasi kung marami ko diya ko sana sumunod yung video na.
Ang bainta, muna yung bainta yun. Ay, yung tao doon. Makasigikan ito kung na.
Ja, daar is het ergste van.
Pero,
Nakikita ko poster yung. Ito man, yeti yung. Wat je waarom had er ook heel? Waarom had er ook? Ik kreeg wel basta pina. Siap. Nee, ze was wat. Kijk, dia luister mooi. Luister mooi. Huh? Luister mooi. Kijk eens.
Uy, siya kung may lain. Malain, no?
Ja.
Ba't sila?
Huh?
Try mo siya.
Dat is wel poster.
Man, ito yung
Ik moet wel beter kunnen zien.
Hij is een slechte film.
Di mo nagsilahan yung click. Plana, out siya, aso. Ano net? Subscribe.
Huh? Ah, zo.
Itu panguni. Iya tu ikut pendidikan. Zero tolerance.
Je zei kap nog aan Nick. Je sterken voor moed.
Het moet. En dat is zo mooi, maar dat moet positief blijven. Kijk hoe klein.
Zo klein.
Wat is die soort proces behind al die spettels wat je doet?
Mijn rent. Dat is het enige way. Worken. Ja. Yes. Zo, die specials de graan is altijd een week voor mijn rent. Niet die rent, de fletse rent.
Oh, je persoonlijk.
Ja. Zo, ik geef de mensen een normaal prijs eerst. Wat ze gaan wees, nou, normaal prijs en dat is special prijs.
Maar, als we nou dan, en we leven dat we een live praten,
Praat is meer buiten mensen die mij, beter overzien mensen.
als we nou een premie als we betalen, kan je nee, die prijs dat die normaal is, daar gaan we niet kijken. Ja, maar niet graag kan ik niet doen. En dan is ja, wat ik ook doe. Die normale tekens van die charge, dat is de normale prijs.
Hoe ben je normaal ketels dan?
Oké, wacht. Als ik nou een maker doe in Python, dat is ook geschreven. Die prijs van die charge voor een normale tekens, dat staat 100 kilogram extra. Ja, dat is gewoon ik dan, wanneer je special maakt, is dat eigenlijk dan een normale prijs.
Meer.
So dat is minder dan wat je je expenses is meer dan je inkomsten is daar van je specials doet.
Kijk nee. Bij toen hè. Als het zo is. Mijn aard, mijn skill wordt eigenlijk dan is betaald.
Zo ook ja.
50% van mijn skill wordt betaald, 50% van.
Dat is die materiaal zeggen.
Eigenlijk 30 naar 40%
Wat
materiaal.
je eigenlijk wil zeggen is, die naald die in kunnen 10 rand kost. Maar ik betaal je 90 rand voor jou.
Jebo.
Voor jou.
Omdat ik skill.
Arbeid.
Omdat ik al ding jaren doen.
Zij moet zeggen arbeid, je kan niet iets anders
Arbeid.
zeggen als arbeider. Ja,
Arbeid, dat is even voor arbeid.
Zij zweet. Basta isi naman sir, ako ba yun?
Sa prawn.
Ay, dumaganda ka lang na. Ay, suspect.
Bakit kung yung
Bayo?
okay sa right?
Saan?
Yeah, may kakailan mo. Kasi nakakuyo lang na isip confident in you.
Je moet het er zelf voor, bro.
Ja, nee, wat? Wie gaat er nu voor je niet?
Maar dan kan je jezelf maken als je niet confident bent in jezelf.
Exactly.
Waarom is maar aan ook op? Maar dan is het goed, maar dat af.
Rij jezelf, hè, bro. Rij zelf. Gezien de guy met zijn kar gestampt.
Joh, nou nog.
Om de gestampt bij je. Wat wil rijden nou?
Ik zou nooit dat we met ons vriendje nog iemand in elkaar rijden. Alhoewel ik het insurance als nou zonder drank moest nou enige insurance betalen met drank dit maar bij insurance is zo dat wil ook al rijden.
Oké, dat is nice. En hoe betaal je?
$1000.
Oké.
Grapje raakte nou jongen. Erg quiet. Ja, het lijkt op het amper klaar. Dat is het wel wat ik
Amper klaar.
Is het amper? Ik zie bij. Zet. We sla je bij je elleboog.
Ja.
Zo. Het lijkt zo zwaar wat te doen. Oké. Hoe lang verkies je met de komt toe?
7 dae.
7 dae. Maar hy strap hoor. Hy rapping op.
Second skin.
Ja.
Ja, zo'n second skin, ja.
En dan smeer en goede.
Na 7 dae trek je de second skin af, was hem af, smeer as 'n paint en bamkrem.
Na die 7 keer dag is.
Ja.
So ek los hom vir 7 dae voor.
Yes. Unless die second skin is allergisch voor het en het cause a chemical, het cause a reaction of hoeveel.
Okay.
Ik heb nu een 5 dagen op maken zaken. Even voor 5 dagen op als ik mijn paint en bamkrem koop.
Okay.
Je moet wel lekker hè.
Ja, ja. En as ek kan sien sal hy afkom met die shower in en Die sessie het ook lekker vinnig gegaan, hè?
Ja, dit het nogal.
Ek het gedink, joh, jy gaan lang bly, maar okay, dit is nog eens die tyd wat ons die kolle, maar dit is so lang gevoel.
Omdat die jy hoor 3 uur en dink jy, joh, is lang hè.
Dit is lang, ja.
Maar as jy die proses sien en deur dit gaan, dan besef jy nee, dit is nie so lang.
Dit is nie so lang, ja.
Sien.
Ek het ook gedink, joh, hoe gaan ek hier kom, maar...
Hier is dit deur het.
Ja.
En dis mooi 3 uur hoor.
Ja, nee, definitief, ek sien hoe het mooi gevoel. Hoe lang is jy nou al in die gebouw?
In die gebouw? 3 jaar nou al.
Just so.
Dat gooi dan net recht gedraaid.
Oh ja, dat is beter man.
Maar je kunt baie praat, jy is ook gedrink is.
Partij mense persoonlik sit in 'n bottel, né?
Is ja. Kijk, hulle is nie so nie. Wat? Hulle is nie baie brothers.
Maar die Dobby het hulle nou 'n bietjie los.
Is ja.
Maar ek snaap hoe dit werk, hè. Die kry mense hulle kwyt teruggetrok, maar hulle kon net 'n bietjie persoonlikheid om op te maak. En dis wat die ding, hele ding so gevaarlik maak, want die kry ouens wat dit kan vat.
Ja.
Die kry ouens wat dit kan vat. Ja, as ouens dit baie netjiese persoonlikheid het, maar die oomblik wat hy ietsie vat,
Ja.
jy 'n ander persoon.
Moet zijn, hè?
Ja, en dit is een van die groot redes hoekom ek letterlik en figuurlik opgehou.
Nee, vir my ook is hulle weer, ek het amper elke naweek beklei.
Ja, nee,
Want, joh, zodra ek my derde auto weg het, dan wil hulle my hou vas.
Ja, dat is... Ja.
Ek en weet nie, môre wat gebeur nie, niks sien.
En dan voel jy sleg.
Jo.
Kom die naweek dan, dis nuwe dinge.
Kyk jy, is asof jy vergeet van alles.
Alles. Nee, dit is so.
Ek moet sê, drank is het regtig van die duiwel af, man.
Nee, ek sê jou, dis baie gevaarlik. Dit kos mense onnodige skade en goede.
Dis ja. Dis nou weggelas. Dit is te hoog, man.
Okay.
Hij is te hoog, is het ongemakkelijk.
Ja.
Dat is het.
Okay.
Is beter, hè?
Ja.
Nou kunt je ons lukken. Jy vir my soveel baie.
Mens besef het jou baie oomblikie, maar as jy dit reg deurdink, as jy realisties oor die saak is, jy is nooit beter af.
Ja.
Meer dat jy, maar jy is beter af sonder dit, want ek het vat hoeveel mense, familiemense, sonder nou vriende nog, is kwaad vir mekaar, weens die gebruik van dit.
En dan sê hulle, as jou ware klere uitkom.
Ja.
Nee man, as jy drang so ware klere is.
Ja. Dit is maar dit lei na goede te wat jy moet nie. Is? Ek sê nie meer erg kwaai geslaan hoor.
Dankie man, ek word lekker seer gemaak vandag.
Ja. Jy kan net voel wanneer jy weet, jy hoef nie nog te gaan by hom, kom net. My eerste paar was ek nogals heel skrikkerig geweest. Miskien die tekene ding en dan lyk jy nie so nie en dan. Dit is altyd my.
Ek het my eerste tattoo gedoen in 2007.
Is dit?
Ja, so skool gewees nog.
Ja, is lang.
Gebeur eintlik so, my neef, hulle is maar so, ek kan nie sê hulle is gangsters, maar hulle try om gangsters te wees.
Ja.
So hulle lyk ons die tattoo gedagte en so en dus. En hulle, eerste keer is het met een naald en 2 metjestokke. En ek sê nooit, ek gaan nooit doen. En sy uitflikreis. Maar so doen nader op hoeveel. Ek sê nee man, dat doen ze hulle. Maar dat is bloedspat hoor. Ek sê, wil je teken ja. Maar ga hulle nie dit doen. Nooit. En dan maak my neef hom uit my sien. Hy is stout gewees hier so.
Hy met die lepel was.
Ja. Die lepel. Kyk, toe sê ek nee, gee hom hier so. Kyk hier my eerste dit wat ek doen het. Hy is mooi te kom joh.
Kan ek nie goed bekeer, excuse wat, hè? Ek weet nie wat.
Jou lichaam is al seer aan my.
Ek sien hy lepel behoor.
Hy lepel oud so jong, joh. Ek sê vir so ons het tattoo sa my ding. Tattoo sa my. Toe jy manne sien ek een tattoo. Toe vraag jy hulle, hy het in Krishna geblei. Vraag jy hulle Krishna doen mee. Met tattooetjes. Maak een idee. Klomp fouten gemaakt, Rera. Klomp fouten gemaakt op tattoos. Ik denk, kan je die recht goed op de tattoo nie? As een zombie, waar je moet brand, fijn maken in je handen, water en dan mekaar schrapen, ink. Zo, naald als een koppie speelt. Een koppie speelt, je moet dik mee, bro.
Ja. Ek kan net dink hoe seer was dit.
Jo, die bloed gespatte Wikipedia, dat is het.
Jo.
Maar je moet eerst beginnen, ik zeg.
Ja, die grootste ding is so mense wil nie volgende stap vat en ek was een van daai gewees. Jy weet jy wil doen, maar jy wil ook nie, want jy weet nie wat jy kan nie resultate verwag sien of jy getry het.
Dis ja.
Nou weet niemand gaan dit eerste keer reg doen.
Zeker.
Oh ja, ik heb nog net bier wel. Most.
Kimmy, it does hurt, it does hurt. Hi there, Mike B. How are you doing? Kom over hier.
Oké. Is hij klaar nog?
Ik denk zo.
Een piek slaan.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining my live. Please double tap your screen. Double tap the screen. We are currently 49 likes. Can I have 50 likes, please? Can one person just double tap the screen so we can be on 50 likes? Awesome. Thank you guys for that 50 likes. Nice to hear Mike B. Mike B, where are you from? Where you guys are watching me from? I'm a local artist in South Africa. Anyone from South Africa here? Welkom zo, Nick. Come on. Come on. Kom zo eens there. There you have it, guys. The finished product. The finished product. USA, awesome, man, awesome. North California. California is my dream destination. I would love to come tattoo in California one day. I think that I got inspired with California's culture. They got a rich tattoo culture there in California. I don't know whether it's north, west, or south, but I think it's they were Long Beach, California. I don't know which part of California is it. Long Beach, California.